Chapter 605. After all, Enchanting was a descendant of an aristocratic family. If it weren't for some purpose, would he be willing to infiltrate the Red Lotus group and work with the rabble? The flame tattoo on his arm meant that this person was already a small leader in the Red Lotus group. Feng couldn't help but wonder if this person wanted to climb to a high position in the Red Lotus group and then seize power and people. His suspicions weren't without reason. Wei Ci also gave him an affirmative answer. He has ambition and courage. How could he be willing to be nameless? But the heavens have treated him coldly, and he still lacks a bit of luck. Luck? Feng laughed. You're becoming more and more of a quack. Did you see this from his physiognomy? Wei Ci avoided the topic. His luck is indeed bad. Wei Ci was very familiar with the life of his former master. Sometimes, luck was also a part of strength. When it came to ability and talent, Enchanting did not lack it. However, he lacked the right timing. Every time he racked his brains and made some progress, he would always be embroiled in the struggles around him. All his efforts would go down the drain. After running around for more than 10 years, he still had not achieved anything. He only had a few hundred veterans under him. Although he had a few fierce generals under him, they were all born in the wilderness and relied on their muscles instead of their brains to fight. The world was in chaos, and Enchanting jumped ship from one power to another. When he was middle-aged, 40 years old, he didn't have territory or manpower. It was truly miserable. In the end, he wandered to Zhongzhou and asked Wei Ci for help. Even Wei Ci had a headache when faced with Enchanting's impoverished family. To be honest, Wei Ci had always paid attention to the situation in the world, but he had no intention of leaving because he felt that no one would dare use him. He was born on the 22nd day of the 8th lunar month in the year of Kuei Yu. Who would dare use him when his birth date was displayed? Even if someone did use him, they would be on guard against him or just use him as a vase. Wei Ci wouldn't be humiliated like that. Therefore, when Enchanting took the initiative to ask him to leave the mountain, the sharp-eyed Wei Ci was quite surprised. But he was clear-minded and vaguely understood the ambition under Enchanting's old appearance. It was rumored that Wei Ci was the reincarnation of the prime minister of the previous dynasty. That prime minister had assisted the founder of the Xia dynasty from insignificance to the position of the ruler of the world. Others took the initiative to invite him out of seclusion. Did they not want to imitate the founding father of the great Xia dynasty? This person was really bold to put a traitor who might betray his master and seize power in an important position. Enchanting was determined to invite Wei Ci. Wei Ci rejected him a few times and was even left with no choice. Enchanting came to visit him at the front door, but he snuck out of the back door. However, this was not a solution. Wei Ci was finally convinced by the other party after a round of sincere conversation. He thought that this person had the ambition of the common people in the world, and had the joy of meeting a wise master. Although Enchanting was somewhat stubborn, hatred was also a form of motivation. Enchanting was no longer young at that time. Wei Ci was also afraid that he was a hero in his twilight years and did not have the slightest desire to fight. Hatred in his heart gave him motivation. Wei Ci had painstakingly planned for Enchanting, created publicity, recruited talents, managed internal government affairs, trained troops on the outside, schemed against other forces, formed alliances, or nibbled away at Enchanting's territory. Wei Ci had worked slowly and steadily to help Enchanting, going from having no territory to occupying half of Nanjing's territory. Jiang Pingji exploited her employees and did not pay them their wages. After the incident, she knew to use the title deed of a mansion worth 1 copper coin to appease them and create various benefits. Disregarding everything else, Yang Si was still able to fatten up in the winter even when he was busy with government affairs. It was evident how good his meals and treatment were. However, when Wei Xi helped Enchui, he was really helping him. He did not see a single salary for several years in a row, but he was willing to endure it. He was realizing his ideals. His body was poor, but his heart was not. However, he never expected Enchui's obsession with revenge to be so deep in his bones. He was so crazy that it surprised him. There was nothing wrong with avenging the country and repaying a debt of blood with blood. However, Wei Xi hoped to integrate the 4 factions of Nanman. It could not be seen in 1 or 2 generations, but after 3 or 4 generations, they would forget their ancestors, civilization, language, and customs and completely integrate into the Central Plains. The people of the 4 factions of Nanman were also people. Only with a large population would the country be strong. At that time, the competition for supremacy in the world would be extremely intense. More than 10 feudal vassals would divide up the territory of the original 5 countries, and they would still be at war with each other. Wei Xi wanted to take advantage of the time when they were fighting fiercely to stabilize the rear, recuperate, and develop himself silently. He felt that he would not be able to see the world being unified in his lifetime, so he wanted to lay a good foundation for his descendants to realize. In the end, Enchui used military force and waged war against the 4 factions of Nanman for years. He was determined to destroy Nanman, and countless people and soldiers died or were injured. In the end, he did destroy the 4 factions of Nanman. Whether they were innocent or not, Nanman still became history, but how many people and soldiers died in the process? Not only did so many people die, but Wei Xi's years of hard work was also wasted. Honestly speaking, if Enchui had not fought against the South several times and wasted too much military, material, and manpower, Jiangpingji would not have been able to annex Enchui's power so quickly. Fortunately, Jiangpingji did not have the habit of killing prisoners of war or massacring cities. Otherwise, more people would have died indirectly because of Enchui. To put it bluntly, if Enchui could become the victor, he would slaughter his clan for revenge and destroy the barbarians. The history books of later generations would praise him as a mighty lord. In the end, he wanted revenge but still dragged his own people and people to hell. Such a person was not a mighty lord, but a tyrant. Even though many years had passed, Wei Xi was still angry when he thought of that history. Fengzhen thought far ahead. He asked Wei Xi, if this person wanted to stab the Red Lotus group in the back, wouldn't that suit my lord's intentions? Wei Xi was silent for a moment, then asked, aren't you afraid of nurturing a tiger and causing trouble? Fengzhen really liked to court death. Helping Enchui to deal with the Red Lotus group was a great idea. This fellow even laughed and said, how can Enchui be considered a tiger? If we use him well, we can use the opportunity to let him restrain the forces in Nanxing. There were no eternal enemies in the world. There were only friends with similar interests and enemies with opposing interests. Wei Xi sighed. Enchui was indeed a tiger, and a big one at that. Once he met the right person, he could soar to the skies. Don't let your guard down. A dam of 1,000 miles can be destroyed by an ant's nest, let alone a living person. Fengzhen said indifferently, you're just too cautious. Enchui is just a stray dog now. Moreover, we don't know if this Enchui can be supported by a wall. Observe him in secret. If it's feasible, we can manipulate him. Wei Xi's expression changed when he heard that. After a while, Wei Xi sighed and said, indeed, I'm thinking too much. He clearly didn't want to be affected by the memories of his past life, but when he considered things, he couldn't help but be dragged into the ditch. The situation now was different from his past life. In his past life, Enchui was powerful and prosperous. His lord, Jiangpingji, was the object of ridicule. A woman vainly trying to get her hands on the 9 tripod cauldrons. How laughable was that? He was so poor that the people under him had more muscles than brains. Although he was capable in war, he was weak in internal affairs. Without a stable rear, how could he expand outward? However, within a few years, Shui, along with a small part of Nanqing, had been swallowed up by this person. Times had changed. Now, Jiang Pingji was strong, and Shui was alone. Chapter 606. What does the Lord think of Shui? Wei Ci asked Jiang Pingji in private. He wanted to hear her evaluation of Shui so that he could carry out the next step of the plan. Jiang Pingji looked at the burning bonfire. She rested her elbows on her knees and rested her cheeks on her palms. "And what special opinion can I have of him? If I have to say, this person is very vengeful. I don't like him very much." Jiang Pingji clicked her tongue and said, "He's not on the same path as us. He's ambitious. Are you trying to rope him in?" Wei Ci almost choked on her speculation. He hurriedly said, "No, I just want to hear the Lord's evaluation of this person." Jiang Pingji snorted with the tip of her nose. "I didn't expect Zixiao to be so curious. As for Andy, I don't like him very much. He doesn't reflect on himself and doesn't learn from his mistakes. If he is unlucky, he will be like this for the rest of his life." Wei Ci was surprised. My lord said that. Shui did not reflect on his mistakes and did not think about his lessons. She said, "Just now, I got a rough understanding of this person's background from him. Speaking of which, he could be considered half a member of the royal family. Ever since their grandfather's generation, the Yin family had risen to glory, enjoying all the riches and honor in the world. Shui was even a young master who lived a lavish life. For the first half of his life, he lived in a honeypot. The 4 factions of Nanman invaded and plundered, destroyed his home and family, and seized his country. He had reason to be angry and take revenge." Wei Ci listened attentively. He knew very well that his lord's way of thinking was very different from ordinary people. She could always come up with fresh ideas. As expected, Jiang Pingji changed the topic. She said, "But Zixiao, I don't think there's anything wrong with the 4 factions of Nanman attacking Nanqing." Wei Ci's expression stiffened. He did not expect his lord to say this. Jiang Pingji raised her hand to stop him. She said in detail, Shui intended to take revenge on the 4 factions of Nanman because of the hatred between his country and his family. Can't the 4 factions of Nanman take revenge on Nanqing for the sake of their homeland and family? Think carefully about what the 4 factions of Nanman have done all along the way to invade, rape and pillage, brutally killing women and children, beheading men who are taller than the shaft of a carriage, not having enough military rations, using human flesh as food. All kinds of crimes are too numerous to list. They were berserkers through and through, brutal and brutal. But does Zixiao know what Nanqing did to the 4 factions of Nanman? Wei Ci was well read. The books he had read in his previous and current lives were as vast as the sea. When she asked this question, Wei Ci seemed to have thought of something. Jiang Pingji sneered and said, "Look at your expression. Zixiao, you know." During the period of the Great Xia dynasty, the 4 tribes of Nanman submitted to the Great Xia dynasty. They paid tribute every year and called themselves subjects. The Central Plains and the barbarians lived in harmony. The last emperor of the Great Xia dynasty was muddle-headed and incompetent, and all the feudal lords in the world had thoughts of rebelling. When Nanqing country was first established, the country was not stable. Many of the southern barbarians were captured to be slaves and soldiers. More than 200,000 people died of exhaustion and battle. Nanqing's capital city was built. Inside the city was a luxurious city, and outside the city were piles of bones. Other than a small number of prisoners of war and slaves, the rest were the strong men of the southern barbarians who had been captured. No matter how Nanching tried to whitewash this history, a fair historian would not give in so easily. Furthermore, after Nanching was founded, the four factions of Nanman claimed to be the suzerain of the country. They used their powerful armies to force the other party to pay tribute year after year. Every year, the tribute was heavier than the last, and the grain tax was so heavy that it was unbearable. The southern barbarians rebelled a few times but were defeated. Nanching suppressed them a few times and slaughtered no less than 100,000 people. The four factions of Nanman were indeed uncivilized barbarians, but were Nanching not beasts in human clothing? Oh right, in the early days of Nanching's founding, human trafficking was very serious. It was roughly divided into three categories: prisoners of war, slaves, and barbarians. Among them, the barbarians had the best physical strength and were the cheapest. Among them, the number of barbarians was the largest. How did they come? They used their armies to seize people and force them to buy and sell. The pockets of many aristocrats in Nanching country were filled with the blood and tears of the barbarians for generations. And Chui dared to say that every penny he used since he was young came from a clean background. She said mockingly, "From what I see, the people of the Central Plains and the barbarians are all people. Everyone has a despicable side." During the glorious period, Nanching claimed to be the legitimate ruler of the Great Xia dynasty, but what did they do that they dared to publicize? How much of the land of the four tribes of Nanman was occupied by Nanching under the pretext of violence? Conspiracy and overt plots, robbery and murder. Nanching's crimes were also too numerous to list. If Nanman were beasts, Nanching wouldn't be able to be open and aboveboard. The difference between the two is that Nanman wrote savagery and cruelty on their faces, while Nanching wore a layer of pretentiousness. After saying this, Jiang Pingji softened her tone. She said, "Do you know why I don't like Chui? It's not that I think it's wrong for him to take revenge. In fact, I also like to take revenge with hatred and revenge with hatred. Hatred for one's country makes one want to eat the enemy's flesh and blood. But Chui is a noble, not a commoner. The more rights he enjoys, the more responsibilities he should bear. His hatred comes from Nanman destroying his family, country, and status, causing him to fall from a favored son of heaven to a stray dog. It's not for the people who are still in the enemy's hands. At a time like this, he still wants to use the people's flesh and blood to take revenge. Shouldn't he think of ways to protect the people, stabilize the situation, and then chase the four factions of Nanman out? To put it bluntly, Chui was too selfish. Jiang Pingji didn't like him. Everyone had selfishness, and she had it too. She understood Chui's feelings, but she couldn't agree with him. When Wei Ci heard this, he was stunned on the spot for a while. Jiang Pingji thought that Wei Ci had suffered a huge blow, so she added, "Now the people of Nanching are meat on the chopping block. We can't let the people of today wait helplessly to be trampled on by Nanman just because of the hatred from a few generations ago. I just feel that Chui hasn't reflected on the grudge between Nanman and Nanching. According to his character, if he really succeeds in taking revenge, the four factions of Nanman won't be far from being annihilated. It was impossible to completely annihilate the tribe. There would always be fish that slipped through the net and escaped. Life was full of ups and downs. Who knew if the descendants of the fish that slipped through the net would stir up an even bigger wave? Wei Ci said, "My lord's way of thinking is different, and it has enlightened me." Jiang Pingji secretly rolled her eyes and asked bluntly, "Zixiao, what's your motive for suddenly asking me about Chui?" Wei Ci was originally hesitant about whether he should let the tiger return to the mountains, but now he was calm. "Previously, Zisher and I talked about something, and I think it's feasible." Wei Ci said, "Chui wants to borrow the troops of the Red Lotus Group, and my lord wants to take back Qingde County, which the Red Lotus Group is entrenched in. Why don't we have a win-win situation? We can let him coordinate with us, and the two of us can work together. There were Shangyang County, Fengyi County, and Qingde County in Wanzhou. Shangyang County was in the bag, and Fengyi County was thriving. If they could have the help of an insider, the difficulty of taking down Qingde County would be greatly reduced. Jiang Pingji was a little tempted by his words. But the Red Lotus Group has a lot of manpower. Are you letting me take advantage of Enchui? After the Red Lotus Group was defeated, the people that were captured would all be hers. Why should she let Enchui, who was alone, take advantage of them? Chapter 607. After hearing Wei Xi's opinion, Jiang Pingji looked as if she had discovered a new continent. She said, I thought Zixiao was the most virtuous. I didn't expect him to have such a sinister side. That was true. Which strategist didn't end up black after being split open? You're right. The Red Lotus Group is different from the Tsingyi army. The former bewitches the ignorant people with groundless doctrines. Their thoughts are stubborn and hard to eradicate. If they spread such a cult in private and affect the people under their rule, it won't be good. It's not bad to throw it out and make use of it. Wei Xi sighed. He knew that she was teasing and joking. If she said it to someone unfamiliar, they would think she was being sarcastic. As long as my lord doesn't mind, Wei Xi said. Jiang Pingji rested her chin on her hand and fiddled with the bonfire, making it burn brighter. Yes, I don't mind. I quite like it. It was a perfectly normal conversation, but Wei Xi had the urge to warm up. Not far away, Fengzhen inexplicably felt like he had been stuffed with a mouthful of dog food. TSK. Looks like I don't have to be nosy. Fengzhen shrugged his shoulders. As a sickly man who had taken too much hanshi powder, he really hated winter and summer. He climbed back into the carriage and blocked it tightly. Only then did he feel at ease and warm himself with the hot water. After a night of wind and snow, the soldiers had already boiled water, soaked dried meat, and cooked millet porridge to tide them over for the morning. Jiang Pingji asked the soldiers to inform Enchui to come over for breakfast. The conditions are simple. Brethren, make do with it. If there's a chance in the future, I'll treat you. Jiang Pingji spoke boldly and politely. Enchui was not someone who didn't know what was good for him, so he hurriedly made small talk and agreed. Dried meat, broth, and porridge. The food was indeed simple, but considering the current conditions, it was considered extremely generous. To add flavor, some spices were added to the broth. It smelled very fragrant. The streaming room opened at a fixed time. The audience, who had been waiting for a long time, rushed in. Some said hello and some said hello. Because the streaming room's upper limit was set at 150,000 people, plus its reputation was known by everyone, it made every seat very difficult to get. Whoever managed to get a seat would definitely show it off on Weibo or WeChat moments. As soon as the audience came in, their sharp eyes noticed that in addition to the streamer, Beauty Ci, and Fengzhen, there was also a stranger. Duanwuji eating zongzi, eh? Who was this person? How could he be qualified to have breakfast with the host? Children's Day snacks, I don't know. I don't think he's appeared before. Do any ancient gods know who this guy is? Fried mushroom, I don't know him either. He probably appeared after the live stream closed last night. Wait a minute, yesterday it was mentioned that the soldiers found a guy who had fainted on the side of the road and was almost covered in snow. The host sent people to save him. Maybe it was him. Yongyong 18-year-old, maybe. If he's really the person who was saved yesterday, he must have some background or ability. The live stream screen was filled with discussions about Enchui. The more serious viewers only discussed Enchui's identity and background, hoping to find some clues. The less serious viewers stared at Enchui's appearance and figure, commenting on him from head to toe. Host V, his name is Enchui. He was indeed saved by the soldiers yesterday. Jiang Pingji sent a bullet screen and continued to have her breakfast with a calm expression. After eating, she wasn't in a hurry to leave. Instead, she asked Enchui with concern. The world is so chaotic now. What plans do you have, brethren? Enchui had been hungry for a long time, but he still maintained his modesty and habits. He only ate until he was 80% full for breakfast. Hearing Jiang Pingji's question, Enchui's expression was a little confused. He immediately became determined and said in a sonorous voice, "The beasts of Nanman trampled the mountains and rivers of my country and enslaved the people of Nanxing. As a man, I should shed my blood and seek revenge from the barbarians." Yes, he wanted revenge. Even when he had collapsed in the snow and lost consciousness, the last thought in his mind was revenge. If the beasts of the 4 factions of Nanman hadn't trampled on Nanxing, destroyed his family, slaughtered his family, destroyed his country, and trampled on his dignity and pride, how could he have fallen from a high and mighty noble gentleman with a bright future to a stray dog today? His country had fallen and he couldn't return to his home. Thinking of those days when he was homeless, even Enchui's eyes couldn't help but turn red. Jiang Pingji said, "Revenge. The 4 factions of Nanman have strong military power. I'm afraid it'll be difficult for brethren to fulfill your wish. If the 4 factions of Nanman were so easy to defeat, Nanxing wouldn't have been destroyed." Enchui's face was as white as paper. His gaze drifted to his arm and he sighed. "I know it's difficult, but if I don't try, how can I be satisfied? I wanted to borrow your country's troops to suppress us, but I didn't expect Dongqing to be in such troubled times. A few years ago, the 4 factions of Nanman had almost breached the capital city of Nanxing. The other 4 countries of the Central Plains had sent troops to support them. However, the 4 factions of Nanman were sinister and cunning. When faced with the reinforcements of the 4 countries, they chose to fight and retreat. At first, the aristocrats of Nanxing thought that the 4 factions of Nanman were afraid of the reinforcements. Later, they realized that they were smart. They fought and retreated, not fighting head-on with the reinforcements. They preserved their troops to the greatest extent. The other 4 countries weren't kind people. They had to be paid for coming from afar to help fight, and the pay wasn't low. The 4 factions of Nanman didn't lose much of their military power. They had the power to stage a comeback at any time. Nanxing could only grit its teeth and swallow its anger. It gave the reinforcements of the other 4 countries generous rewards, such as land, money, rations, military equipment, and even population. After the reinforcements retreated, the 4 factions of Nanman attacked again. Some aristocrats and relatives of the royal family in the country betrayed information and military intelligence for their own interests. This made the destruction of Nanxing a foregone conclusion. Enchui had wanted to borrow troops from Dongqing, but he didn't expect Dongqing to be in a difficult situation. Jiang Pingji pretended to suggest to him, "Why don't you try going to Zhongzhou?" Enchui laughed bitterly. He had escaped to Dongqing by a narrow escape and faced the threat of death several times. Now that he had to go to Zhongzhou, he didn't know if he would survive. "To tell you the truth, I tried my best to sneak into the Red Lotus group with my own intentions." Enchui heaved a long sigh of relief. There was a look of determination between his brows. The Red Lotus group bewitches the people with their teachings. Now, they have gathered tens of thousands of members. Not only in the north of Dongqing, but they also go to other places to spread their teachings and trick the people into joining. They seem similar to Buddhism and Taoism, but in reality, they are no different from a cult. Jiang Pingji raised her brows discreetly. She had just been thinking about how to cooperate with Shui, but he had come up to her himself. He said all this to pave the way for his next goal. Jiang Pingji took the opportunity to reveal a worried expression. She said, "The Red Lotus Group is indeed a malignant tumor. If we allow them to take root in the north of Dongqing and spread their teachings, in another 2 or 3 years, the people in the north will be bewitched into joining the cult by the Red Lotus Group." Chapter 608. Both of them clearly had the intention to cooperate, but they still tried to trick each other. The viewers in the streaming room were dumbfounded. They thought Shui would become Jiang Pingji's strategist. They were already prepared to laugh. Some of them brought over a bench to eat melon seeds. They sat and watched how the streamer tricked someone into coming over and then threw heavy administrative tasks to Shui. Casserole mutton chop with noodles. I love watching the streamer trick people. Thinking about how Feng Jin used to have a cheap mouth, the streamer forced him to quit eating hanshi powder in order to exploit him. I went to find out what withdrawal symptoms were, and then my heart ached for him. Charcoal roasted enoki mushroom, tsk. How many workers have been tricked by the streamer? Just look at Feng Jin. He's very unrestrained, but that's in the past. Now he has to tremble with fear when he drinks every day, afraid that a pair of eyes is staring at him from a corner. How pitiful. Sprite and cola, I'm betting on a cucumber. Guess how many rounds the streamer will need to take down Shui? Ippon tofu, I'm not betting. I'm on the streamer's side anyway. Today's dinner, I'm on the streamer's side too. She'll definitely take him down within 30 rounds. A group of salted fish in the pool who only knew how to cheer for the streamer discussed noisily. However, as the two conversed, the onlookers felt that something was wrong. Why, did it not feel like she was taking in a follower? Was it their imagination? Jiang Pingji sighed worriedly. I only have 20,000 troops. Although the Red Lotus Group is a motley crew, they claim to have 100,000 members. It's not easy to deal with them. I also want to remove this tumor, but I'm alone. I'm afraid I can't do it alone. And Shui took advantage of the situation and volunteered himself. If you don't mind, why don't I be your pawn and open the way for you? The two had only known each other for a short period of time, but they were already calling each other brother and brotherin, as if they were very close. Jiang Pingji's heart skipped a beat. She looked somewhat puzzled. Brotherin, what do you mean? And Shui said, we can work together from within and without. Although I don't have much ability, I have some confidence in the Red Lotus Group that can be of great use. Brother, you only have 20,000 troops, but each of them is good at fighting and can fight 10 of them alone. With the help of our spies, the Red Lotus Group will not be destroyed. Jiang Pingji revealed a slightly tempted expression, but she wanted to say something but stopped herself. She deliberately kept Shui's heart in suspense. After a while, she finished deliberating and said hesitantly, if that's the case, I'll feel very sorry. Coordinating from the inside would certainly be extremely dangerous. If Brotherin were to be careless and be discovered by the traitors of the Red Lotus Group, wouldn't that be harming Brotherin? No, I can't take the risk. And almost couldn't catch her breath. That wasn't how the script was written. He said, everything has a risk. How can one give up eating for fear of choking? Jiang Pingji looked hesitant. Her gaze kept drifting in the direction of Wei Xiai and Feng Jin, as if she couldn't make up her mind. Feng Jin raised his eyebrows and deliberately chose not to respond, but Wei Xiai had no choice but to cooperate. My lord, I think this is feasible. In order to cooperate with Jiang Pingji's performance, Wei Xiai had no choice but to put on a confident and slightly arrogant attitude. Although the Red Lotus Group has a large number of members and claims to have 100,000 members, they are undisciplined and undisciplined. In addition, the Red Lotus Group secretly exploits the people and defrauds them of their wealth with their teachings. There are countless victims and complaints. If we can join forces with Mr. my lord will attack from the outside and Brother will coordinate from the inside to deal with the people who are dissatisfied with the Red Lotus Group. Will we have to worry about not being able to take down Qingde County? The Red Lotus Group's operations were focused on Qingde County. With Qingde County as the center, they expanded to other places, deceiving countless people along the way. If Qingde County fell, it was equivalent to uprooting the foundation of the Red Lotus Group. The other scattered strongholds could be slowly cleaned up. Jiang Pingji nodded in agreement. Zixiao is right, but the original plan was to send troops in spring. It's still the middle of winter now, she agreed. And felt that his opportunity had come. He cupped his hands in front of his chest and said, "Brother, don't be anxious. This matter is of great importance and should indeed be planned slowly. Brother, you have long had the intention to uproot the evil group and benefit the people. This is a great deed. There are still a few months before spring. I can also take advantage of this time to properly deploy and try to ensure that nothing goes wrong." Jiang Pingji continued to act as a silly, sweet, and passionate lord without much experience in the martial world. How could she take advantage of him? In that case, I will first thank you on behalf of the people. Brother is benevolent and righteous. If we can completely uproot the Red Lotus Group and save the people in the north who are suffering and being bewitched, this move will surely be remembered for generations to come. Jiang Pingji seemed very excited. She couldn't wait to do something big right now. She said, "If it succeeds, Brother will have contributed a lot. How can Lanting claim all the credit?" And Shui had been waiting for Jiang Pingji to say this. He said self-deprecatingly, "I'm just a stray dog. I'm already satisfied to be able to do what I can to benefit the people. I don't ask for anything more." Jiang Pingji said enthusiastically, "Brother, why do you have to belittle yourself? So what if you don't have troops? With your ability, you will have them in the future. How about this, if we conquer Fingyi County, Brother will get 10% of the money and manpower we obtain." And Shui's heart beat uncontrollably. 10%. He had indeed thought of coaxing some benefits, but he had never thought that this silly and bold person would be so generous. She would ask for 10% of the money and manpower. The Red Lotus Group's ill-gotten gains were far more than 10 million. Even if it was only 10%, it would still be a huge figure. With money and the 10% of manpower that he would get, and Shui would be able to slowly build up his power. Perhaps he could even go further. And Shui had been lurking in the Red Lotus Group for several months. He had carefully managed to build up some manpower, but there were only a few hundred of them. If he could help Jiang Pingji conquer Qingde County, his manpower and wealth would increase by dozens of times. He was already tempted, but he still had to be humble on the surface. "I'm just providing support. I don't have any great merits. How can it compare to you leading troops to exterminate the evil sect? No, this gift is too heavy. I'm ashamed to accept it." Jiang Pingji was so enthusiastic. She was a proper, foolish son of a landlord. How could she take back the profits she had promised? The two of them pushed back and forth for a few rounds. Under Jiang Pingji's coercion, and Shui reluctantly accepted the heavy thanks. With a common cooperation, the atmosphere was naturally harmonious. They addressed each other as brother and younger brother. They were like a pair of iron brothers. Feng Zhen was the first to lose it. He got goosebumps all over his body and found an excuse to sneak away. He even pulled Wei Xiai away at the same time. The two of them whispered to each other. "My lord is too generous. 10% of the wealth and manpower. She's like a foolish son of a landlord." Feng Zhen was as talkative as ever. Wei Ci laughed. My lord's focus is on the northern part of Dongqing. She can't take care of other forces. It's not bad if she can make Enchui a target. Besides, Enchui's enemies are the 4 factions of Nanman. The latter even destroyed Nanxing. Why would they be afraid of Enchui? Even in his previous life, Enchui had to squander years of Wei Ci's painstaking efforts. Coupled with the locust plague and the Nanxing tribe, he was lucky to win. The 4 factions of Nanman were still at their peak. If Enchui wanted revenge, it would be like throwing an egg against a rock. Wei Ci continued. You don't know how big of a hidden danger the die-hard members of the Red Lotus group are. None of them can be left alive. Even without Enchui, Wei Ci wanted to privately suggest to Jiang Pingji to slaughter all the higher-ups of the Red Lotus group. Chapter 609. Feng Zhen laughed and said, since it's a hidden danger, we naturally have to eliminate it as soon as possible. Are you sure it's foolproof that you're pushing these malignant tumors to Enchui? If Enchui put these high-ranking members of the Red Lotus group in an important position, and Enchui came over to challenge them instead, what would happen then? Wei Ci shook his head. He said very confidently, those people from the Red Lotus group have already tasted what it's like to be in a high position. How can they easily submit to others? Not to mention that Enchui was originally just an insignificant member of the Red Lotus sect. The upper echelons of the Red Lotus group would temporarily endure for the sake of their lives, but they would not be able to do so for long. As for Enchui, he's very smart. Once something threatens his existence. No matter what, Enchui was from an aristocratic family. No matter how low his emotional intelligence was, his intelligence was still there. If the people from the Red Lotus group had the ability to outplay Enchui, Enchui would not have been able to rise to the position of a minor leader in just a few short months. So, just wait and see. This was destined to be a situation where both sides would make use of each other. It was just a matter of who was superior. Once Enchui felt that he no longer needed these people, it would be their time to die. Feng Zhen went around in circles for a long time before he vaguely understood Wei Ci's plan. Are you planning to use Enchui to kill those people from the Red Lotus group? Wasn't it just killing a person? Was there a need to go around in such a big circle? The answer was that it was necessary, very necessary. My lord should not be tainted with the bad reputation of killing prisoners of war, but the stubborn cancer of the Red Lotus group cannot be left alive. Enchui was an accident. Without him, Ci could only be the bad guy for once. Since we have him, why not make use of him? Feng Zhen was speechless. What had the Red Lotus group done to provoke Wei Ci that he was so concerned about them? In fact, Wei Ci would take note of every person who made him unhappy. It didn't matter whether he could get back at them or not. What was important was that he had to remember this matter. However, the Red Lotus group did not provoke Wei Ci. Instead, they provoked Jiang Pingji. Wei Ci still remembered that in his previous life, when the world had just been stabilized, His Majesty had sacrificed the Jiuzhou divine cauldron, ascended the throne with the sacred mountain, and established the country as Jiang. The Jiuzhou and the Four Seas were in urgent need of reorganization, but the aftermath of more than 10 years of war was not something that could be resolved in 1 or 2 days. In addition, the weather was not good. Occasionally, there would be a food shortage. The people were anxious and uneasy, and there were rumors that the Empress was a demon. At this moment, the Red Lotus group, which was left with only a wisp of flame, seized the opportunity to stage a comeback. Although it did not shake the foundation of the country, it added a few feet of official documents to Jiang Pingji's desk. The common people were unwilling to believe her. Instead, they chose to believe the remnants of the Red Lotus group, who were spreading lies to deceive the masses, and led troops in rebellion. One could imagine how she felt. Hence, Wei Ci was in a bad mood. If he was in a bad mood, how could the Red Lotus group have a good life? Fengzhen clicked his tongue and teased, "You're really shameless. You deceive the world with your looks. You're clearly a hypocrite." Although she did not know how the Red Lotus group had offended Wei Ci did not hide his malice towards the Red Lotus group at all. Wei Ci said, "Looks are given to us by our parents. It's an innate advantage. What's wrong with using it occasionally?" He had never claimed that he was a gentleman. If he really wanted to blame someone, then he could only blame his parents for giving him a face that was too beautiful and elegant and harmless. Oh, some people couldn't even be jealous. On the other hand, Jiang Pingji and Enchui had already reached a preliminary consensus on their cooperation. Before the beginning of spring, Jiang Pingji would send people to take pity on Enchui at regular intervals. Thinking of Enchui's previous predicament of almost freezing to death by the roadside, Jiang Pingji ordered people to prepare food and inconspicuous belongings for him. The food shortage in the north and other places was getting worse by the day. The spring plowing and autumn harvest for the past 2 years had also been put on hold because of the war. The common people had also left their homes, and the fields were barren and uncultivated. Naturally, the production of food would be greatly reduced. And Shui had become a small leader in the Red Lotus group. Logically speaking, he should not be that poor, but he still needed to use his income to recruit confidants. He could only live frugally and save as much as he could. "Brethren, please don't decline. This is all out of my good intentions. You must accept it." Jiang Pingji could not wait for Enchui to settle down quickly so that he could contribute to the war after the beginning of spring. Some food and a few hundred taels of silver were nothing at all. They were insignificant to her, but for the destitute Enchui, it was a timely help. Enchui declined for a while, but in the end, he accepted it with a shameful expression. He kept saying that he would repay her double in the future. Jiang Pingji said, "You and I share the same interests, like old friends. If we talk about such tacky things, wouldn't it ruin our friendship?" And Chui smiled on the surface, but he was laughing in his heart. He was a young master of a wealthy family who did not know the sufferings of the world, the foolish son of a landlord. It seemed that Lu Shi had contributed a large part to Lu Shi's conquest of Fengyi County and the development of the county so well. After all, according to the persona that Jiang Pingji had revealed so far, she indeed did not have such great capabilities. Unknowingly, Enchui's heart had become less vigilant, and he had become more contemptuous and casual. He had thought that Lu Shi had cultivated to a high level at such a young age. Now that he had seen it, it seemed that there was an expert guiding her from behind the scenes. That was why she had the glory she had today. The audience in the streaming room did not understand. "Jin Tianiging, streamer, this is not like you at all. You don't get any benefits, yet you spend money first." Ming Tian Buzao, to the person above, "That's not right. For example, when you go fishing, don't you put bait on the hook before fishing?" The streamer obviously wants to make use of Enchui to stir up trouble. Compared to her current overdraft, the future profits are too tempting. Too sleepy, but what if Enchui escapes with the rations and money? Duanmuan Kong, first of all, Enchui is a member of the aristocracy of Nanxing. The streamer has already confirmed this. Since he is a member of the aristocracy, do you think Enchui has never seen such a small amount of money? What he desires is the 10% of the people and money that the streamer has promised him. With money and people, he can slowly develop his power and take revenge for his country. That is the real, big fish. How can a person with ambition and brains give up such a big harvest for a little bit of bait? The streamer will definitely profit in this game. Everybody sleeps early. No, to be precise, it should be a win-win situation. And Shui does not lose out either. He has neither the people nor the rations now. He only needs to coordinate with the streamer. Without sending a single soldier, he can get 10% of the profits. Even loan sharks do not have such huge profits. This situation seems to be a win-win situation, but no one knows what the real future holds. After bidding farewell to Enchanting, Jiang Pingji's convoy continued on its way. The heavy snow had stopped, but the snow was deep, making it difficult for horses and carriages to travel. The journey that was originally expected to take 7 to 8 days had taken more than half a month. Feng Jin had long received news that Jiang Pingji would come personally, but he waited and waited, but she did not come. This made him extremely anxious. Report, there is an envoy from Fengyi County outside the city. Chapter 610. When the servant reported, Feng Gue was playing chess with his father, Feng Ren. When he heard the news, he couldn't help but raise his head to look at Feng Ren. I didn't expect Lu Shi to really come. How brave. Feng Ren smiled as he placed his chess piece. Both he and Feng Gue were people who liked to take things slowly. As the number of confrontations increased, the situation on the chessboard became more and more complicated, making it difficult to predict. He's braver than Lu Shi. Feng Gue was still rather curious about Feng Jin's lord. If I remember correctly, you've met Lu Shi before. What kind of person is he? During the assessment in Shangjing, Lu Shi and his son had stayed in Feng Ren's house. Feng Ren had told Feng Gue about this. Feng Ren said, he's a rather spirited young man. He's much more upright than his father. However, Feng Ren had never expected Lu Shi to have such ambitions. However, he could understand that Lu Shi and the Dongqing royal family were at odds. There was an irreconcilable conflict between the two. I'm afraid this alone won't be enough to convince Yu. I really want to meet him sooner. Feng Gui's lips curled into a gentle smile. Although he had changed from a married man to a divorced man with 2 children, without Madame Fengdu's hysteria and pestering, he seemed to have lost his burden. He felt more relaxed and his breathing became calmer. Although he really wanted to meet the legendary Jiang Pingji, Feng Gui's identity prevented him from going out of the city to welcome her. After all, Madame Feng wasn't Jiang Pingji's subjects. They should be equal in terms of status and not superior and subordinate. Feng Ren said, what's the hurry? We'll meet eventually. I hope he doesn't disappoint. Feng Ren had a good impression of Jiang Pingji. This good impression wasn't because of her identity as Lu Shi's son. On the contrary, the identity of Lu Shi's son was a minus for Feng Ren. If Lu Shi was as two-faced as Lu Shi, he wouldn't be at ease. Feng Ren felt that Jiang Pingji was good only because when Feng Jin was accidentally injured by the 3 tribes of the northern borderline at Jishan's hot spring, only Jiang Pingji stepped forward. It was better to have such a loyal and friendly lord than to be unfaithful and heartless. However, Feng Ren felt that Jiang Pingji was a loyal and righteous person, but Feng Jin felt that his lord was a heartless man. He hurriedly went out of the city to welcome them. He couldn't help but be overjoyed. His lord immediately greeted him. Yu, are you going back before or after the new year? Jiang Pingji got off the horse and held the reins in her hand. Feng Jin had just finished bowing to her, and she had already poked his sore spot. Feng Jin was at a loss and did not know what was going on. When he saw Jiang Pingji's half-smiling face, his heart thumped. Wait a minute, she said, the documents in the government office are almost touching the roof beams. Xiao Yu and the others are helping you, but you still have to return them when you go back. Feng Jin's smile froze. He leaned closer to Jiang Pingji and suppressed his complicated feelings. He gritted his teeth and asked her in a low voice, My lord, I've done you a great service by returning home this time. Let's not talk about contributions, but hard work. In the end, is this how you reward people? Usually, Feng Jin rarely used formal words like you, but now he deliberately emphasized the pronunciation. Jiang Pingji was unperturbed. She tucked her hands into her sleeves and her eyes were smiling. That's a different matter. She said calmly, Huayu has done a great service, so naturally, you should be rewarded handsomely. But it's also true that you deliberately slacked off and delayed your return in Shangyang County. As a lord, you must be clear about rewards and punishments. You can't slack off. Only when there are rewards and punishments can people be convinced. Feng Jin's expression was like a pallet that had been overturned. He relied on his strong willpower not to kill his lord. Wei Xiai had an expression that said, I didn't see anything. On the other hand, Feng Zhen was mercilessly watching the show with a smile. Only the audience in the streaming room had some conscience and knew to feel sorry for Feng Jin. Duanwu Jia Kong, ha ha ha, streamer, doesn't your conscience hurt? I just saw baby Feng Jin riding his horse out of the city with a face full of joy. It looks like he didn't even have time to tidy up his appearance. He was so happy, but you poured a bucket of cold water on him the moment you saw him. Happy Children's Day, it's not just a bucket of cold water, it's 1,000 years of ice. My heart feels cold. Mingtian Yufenwei, before seeing the streamer, baby Feng Jin's mood must have been, I really want to see my lord. I'm begging for praise, appreciation, and kisses. After seeing the streamer, his mood is like F** king a dog, what lousy lord, I want to jump ship. Feng Jin Bao aggrieved, baby Feng Jin's mood is very bad. He doesn't want to say anything and threw a dog to the streamer. Zhugong Bao watching a show, the streamer has no integrity and caught the dog thrown by baby Feng Jin. She even happily F***ed it. Looking at the streaming room that had lost its integrity, Jiang Pingji felt that she should drag the system out and give it a beating. The system had set so many permissions for the streaming room backstage. Why didn't it restrict the level of the bullet screen as well? Look at the 2 bullet screens that flew past just now. Was that something a child could see? Fortunately, Feng Jin understood his lord and best friend well enough. He felt depressed for a while and then let go of it. Wasn't it just being caught skipping work for a few days? He didn't believe that there would be many official documents accumulated over the past few days. Because they had already informed the guards at the city gates beforehand, they let them through. Feng Jin welcomed Jiang Pingji into the city. My lord, did you really agree to that condition? Feng Jin asked her in a low voice. He was rather worried. He understood Jiang Pingji's temperament. Those who had boarded the pirate ship could forget about getting off. How could she easily agree to the Feng family's condition? She replied, why wouldn't I agree? This is a win-win deal. We can take over Shangyang County without losing a single soldier. How great is that? As for the Feng family, Shangyang County would be hers. The Feng family would also be hers in the future. No matter who the Feng family had bet their treasures on, that person would be defeated by her. Moreover, this world will be mine in the future. What's more, it's the Feng family. For her, it was just something that belonged to her passing through someone else's hands and then returning to her. There was no loss. According to the usual script, Feng Jin should be subdued by Jiang Pingji's domineering spirit, but he only felt that his lord's illness was acting up again. She was a Chinibu. Feng Jin also wanted Jiang Pingji to win in the end, but the world was unpredictable. Who could guarantee what would happen in the future? If that's the case, I'll wait and see. Jiang Pingji poured cold water on him coldly. We'll talk about it when you're alive to finish the accumulated government affairs. Let's see if you dare to skip work in the future. Feng Jin was speechless. He felt that if Jiang Pingji lost in the future, it would definitely be because of her mouth. Why was she so annoying? Feng Jin asked someone to settle the guards and the carriage. Then, he led Jiang Pingji and her group into the Feng residence. Feng Ren had been waiting for a long time. Chapter 611. Jiang Pingji had seen Feng Ren before. A few years had passed, but the retired Feng Ren looked younger and more spirited than before. Because Feng Jin had already discussed the matter beforehand, they were almost done. All that was left was for Jiang Pingji to agree, and the ownership of Shangyang County would be transferred. It could be said that from the moment she stepped into the Feng residence, Shangyang County already belonged to her. Feng Ren was still as elegant and humorous as before. He and Jiang Pingji did not engage in bureaucratic jargon. Instead, he asked about Lu Shi's recent situation. Looking at the content of their conversation, it did not seem like they were discussing the ownership of Shangyang County. It was more like a casual conversation between an elder and a junior. The atmosphere was exceptionally harmonious. There was not a hint of anger. Feng Ren sighed with emotion. Lu Shi is not a good person, but he has raised a good son. He and Lu Shi were friends of gentlemen. The two were often compared. He was slightly better than Feng Ren, but he did not expect his children and grandchildren to lose. Lu Shi only had one son, but this one son was more promising than all three of his sons. Jiang Pingji had personally come to Shangyang County from Fengyi County. This was enough to show her sincerity. Feng Ren was not someone who would push his luck. She had already agreed to the most important condition. The other conditions were just icing on the cake. To the Feng family, they were not essential. Therefore, Feng Ren did not make things difficult for Jiang Pingji. Instead, he expressed his goodwill. The atmosphere was very harmonious. When the sincere conversation ended, Feng Ren ordered Feng Gue to personally send her off. On the way, Feng Gue secretly observed Jiang Pingji and invited her. Today, the residents plans to invite the chief of Shangyang County. I wonder if Lanting would like to attend the banquet? Jiang Pingji perked up. She knew the main course had arrived. She said, "It is my honor to be invited by the residents." Although the Feng family could decide the ownership of Shangyang County, they still had to inform the chief of the decision. Feng Gue was Feng Jin's elder brother. Jiang Pingji had to give him face. Therefore, when Feng Gue tried to probe her, she did not mind and responded smoothly. Seeing this, Feng Gue was secretly satisfied. After the banquet, Feng Ren asked him about his impression of Jiang Pingji. Feng Gue replied, "This person is quite talented. Huayu did not choose the wrong person." No matter what he asked, Jiang Pingji always had her own understanding. Although it was a little unconventional, it was not without basis. Even someone as conservative and inflexible as Feng Gue could not help but agree with Jiang Pingji's opinion. What made him even happier was that Jiang Pingji already had a rather comprehensive plan for the future cultivation and recuperation of Shangyang County. If she followed her plan, Shangyang County would be able to walk out of the haze of war in less than a year and a half. She was indeed a talented person. Before the conversation, Feng Gue had thought that Jiang Pingji was young and impulsive. After a long discussion, he gave up on the idea. Although Lu Shi is young, he is extremely shrewd. His words and actions are quite graceful. I've tested him several times. No matter what I asked, no matter how tricky the content was, he was able to answer it smoothly. It's clear that he's well prepared. It would not be a bad thing to hand Shangyang County over to him. Huayu chose him after careful consideration. Father, you can rest assured. Feng Ren said, I'm not worried about Lu Shi. I'm worried about Lu Shi. Feng Gue did not understand. Lu Shi had an extremely good reputation in Dongqing. If not for the secret suppression of the royal family, he would have long been a renowned scholar. Feng Ren sighed. You don't know, Lu Shi is very black-hearted. He's willing to hide behind the scenes and let his son, Lu Shi, work hard in the outside world. This is beyond my expectations. I'm afraid that this pair of father and son will not be able to withstand the test of power. One day, they will fall out and become enemies. Feng Ren was shocked. That can't be, right? If Lu Shi is really ambitious, he can do it himself. There are many people who are willing to surrender. Lu Shi was not Lu Shi. The former had everything he wanted, while the latter had yet to grow up. When the two were put together, even a fool would know which was more attractive. If Lu Shi was ambitious and he was willing to stand up, perhaps half of the north would already be in Lu Shi's hands. His father's evaluation of Lu Shi had always been very positive. Why was he suddenly so worried today? I hope I'm overthinking, but this Lu Shi, it's really hard to say. At this point, Feng Ren suddenly paused. He sighed and did not continue. On the other side, Feng Jin thought of Jiang Pingji's illegitimate brother. He mentioned it to her so that she would not make a wedding dress for others in the future. Lanting, it's not that I want to sow discord between you and uncle, but in the eyes of the world, you are a woman after all. You can't inherit the family business. Uncle Lu is obedient to you now, but it doesn't mean that he won't feel empty in the future. He will remarry or put his illegitimate son in an important position. Although he is only an illegitimate son, he is still a son who can continue the family line. He can carry on the family line for the Lu family. Feng Jin and Jiang Pingji talked in secret. They did not address her as Lord, but called her by her courtesy name. Jiang Pingji was silent for a moment. She said, I've thought about what you said. Ha! Feng Jin was surprised. His lord had already thought about this. Jiang Pingji's expression became thought-provoking. He did not know if it was an illusion, but her face seemed to be covered with a layer of shadow. Huayu, I plan to find an opportunity to reveal my identity, she said. Feng Jin's mind was blown by the news. You want to reveal your identity? Why? Jiang Pingji said, to prevent others from taking advantage of me. I can't hide it forever. According to what you said, the illegitimate son is still a son. I have to guard against him. If I use my identity as a woman to stabilize everything, he won't have a chance to fight for it. Somehow, Feng Jin felt that Jiang Pingji's words had a deeper meaning, but he could not decipher it for the time being. All right, but you must find a suitable opportunity. Don't act rashly. Feng Jin frowned. He felt that it was good for Jiang Pingji to reveal her identity so that she would not tremble in fear in the future. However, he did not know if others could accept it. I know. Jiang Pingji looked down to hide the light in her eyes. Lu Shi had an illegitimate daughter in his backyard, Lu Huan. She was the illegitimate daughter of Wang Huiyun and Prince Changshou. The illegitimate son was also not Lu Shi's son. After all, Lu Shi had once said that he only had one wife, Gu Min, and no other women. Using the illegitimate son was just to divert the enemy's attention. Jiang Pingji already knew who the enemy was. The illegitimate son's presence in the backyard was even lower than Lu Huan's. If she did not deliberately remind him, she would also ignore him. However, ignoring him did not mean that he did not exist. The outside world still thought that he was Lu Shi's illegitimate son, including the illegitimate son himself. Although he was an illegitimate son, he could inherit the family business if there were no other brothers. Jiang Pingji smiled coldly. According to Lu Shi's petty nature, he could adopt the daughter of his enemy, Wang Huiyun, as an illegitimate daughter. Who knew what this illegitimate son's background was? She already had a rough deduction in her heart. She only needed to verify it with his father-in-law, Wei Yuan. Chapter 612. What did bandits do? They were bandits who made a living by burning, killing, and looting. They specialized in doing bad things, not good things, and harming others to benefit themselves. However, ever since a valiant female bandit leader came to this mountain, the bandits realized that they could change their name to Lei Feng. Hey, do you guys think there's something wrong with this boss of ours? We're bandits, not government officials. We're only in charge of robbing and killing. Why do we have to cultivate farmland, do farm work, and do all those weird things? It's so embarrassing. One of the bandits secretly rubbed his head, then looked at the house in the middle of the bandit stronghold. Who cares if there's something wrong with her brain? We can't beat her anyway. Another patrolling bandit muttered in a low voice, we can't beat her. She can smash your head open with one punch. Who dares to provoke her? Didn't you see what happened to our previous boss? His neck was directly broken by 2 fingers, and he slowly stopped breathing. I saw it, his tongue was sticking out for a long time. The bandit stronghold was originally a gathering place for men. Women only had one role here, to warm the bed and satisfy their lust. However, a valiant woman had descended from the sky and single-handedly knocked down all the men in their stronghold. At first, they were afraid of the other party's strength and had no choice but to submit. After a while, the original leaders were dissatisfied with her tyranny and protested seriously. Men, especially the hot-blooded bandits who were used to living a dissolute life, how could they stand not having a woman by their side? Unfortunately, the women that the bandits had kidnapped were all released by the female bandit leader. The female bandit leader was the only woman in the entire stronghold. Under the influence of various emotions, the original leaders planned to sneak attack the new female bandit leader and tie her up to use her as a prostitute. The result could be imagined. Before the leaders could make a move, the female bandit leader had already taken the initiative. In front of all the brothers in the stronghold, she strangled them to death, crushed their necks, and rewarded their corpses to the tigers that she had caught. His words evoked a cruel memory, and his companion shuddered. Since then, all the men in the bandit stronghold had been traumatized. Those who could escape did so, and those who had nowhere to run could only tremble and work for the female leader. No one dared to look at her directly, afraid that she would chop them into pieces. Hey, don't scare me, I'm a coward. I had nightmares for half a month after that day. The bandit couldn't help but tremble when he thought about how he had just cursed the female boss for having a problem with her brain. On the other side, Jiang Pingji was too lazy to care about these rumors. To her, it didn't matter if these bandits were loyal to her or not. What was important was that they were obedient. There are so many bandit strongholds nearby. She promoted a clever bandit to be her inept advisor. It was said that before he became a bandit, he was a scholar with a bit of fame. He had studied for 2 years and could recognize a few words. Sigh, the weather hasn't been good these past few years. How many people can't survive? The high officials in the imperial court only care about themselves. How much tax does a family have to pay every year? How many people are driven to death? If they can't survive, they can only become bandits. Therefore, there are quite a lot of bandit strongholds nearby. Jiang Pingji frowned. Tax. Will people be driven to death if they can't pay their taxes? She rarely spoke. When she spoke, she had an accent. No one knew where she was from, and it sounded very awkward. The inept advisor was surprised. Where did this boss come from? She didn't even know about this. Isn't that so? If they can't collect taxes, they will rob everything in the house that can be sold. If they have a pretty daughter at home, they might even kidnap her and sell her. Sigh, anyway, there are all kinds of tragedies. These days, people who reincarnate as adults are born to suffer. Jiang Pingji was silent for a while. She remembered that Widow Zhao's husband was violently shoved by the tax collectors. He accidentally fell to the ground and his head hit a rock and died. Every time this matter was brought up, Widow Zhao's face would turn deathly pale, and her eyes would reveal a look of despair and pain. The current situation was not good. There were many commoners who became bandits. The government could not be bothered to control these bandits. Suppressing bandits also required a lot of manpower, material resources, and financial resources. The money allocated by the higher-ups was deducted layer by layer. Therefore, the bandits became even more unscrupulous. They burned, killed, looted, or fought and annexed each other. Not long after Jiang Pingji occupied the stronghold, her peers came to fight. They heard that the bandit stronghold had just changed leaders. They thought that the stronghold's vitality was greatly damaged and they could take advantage of it. However, the outcome was often unexpected. Not only did they not succeed in robbing the stronghold, but Jiang Pingji led a group of subordinates to raid the stronghold. She counted all kinds of income expressionlessly. No wonder so many people become bandits. It's indeed faster to earn money by robbing. The bandits kneeling on the ground were trembling with fear. Some of them could not help but wet their pants. They had urinary incontinence. They could not be blamed for being too cowardly. It was because Jiang Pingji was too ruthless in killing people. They fought their way in from the entrance of the stronghold. There were corpses lying under their feet. When they got up, they looked like ferocious ghosts who had crawled out of hell. Bandits were braver than ordinary people, but to put it bluntly, they were still mortals. How could they withstand the oppression of her aura? For others, aura was something that was accumulated over a long period of time. For Jiang Pingji, the oppression of her spiritual realm forcibly imprinted the slave mark in people's minds so that they would not have the slightest desire to resist when facing her. With the financial income this time, Jiang Pingji increasingly liked to find trouble. On one hand, she increased the extra income of the stronghold, and on the other hand, she expanded the territory and manpower. Gradually, Jiang Pingji became a famous bandit in Hejin County. Some of the bandit strongholds did not need her to fight for them. They took the initiative to come to her. In just half a year, the population of the stronghold had increased from a few dozen to 4,000 or 5,000. It directly alarmed the Hejin County chief. The Hejin County chief was trembling with fear. He was afraid that Jiang Pingji was going to cause trouble. But Jiang Pingji was not that bored. Instead, she restrained her subordinates and set several strict rules. If anyone violated them, they would be directly chopped up and fed to the tigers. However, if the bandits did not have the great income, how would the 4,000 or 5,000 people survive? Of course, there was. Jiang Pingji ordered people to reclaim the wasteland and rely on themselves. At the same time, she selected bandits with better physique and specifically trained them in martial arts. She asked them to escort the merchant teams that traveled from south to north for a certain escort fee. Now that the world was in chaos, business was not so easy to do. The merchant teams were often robbed by bandits. If it was light, they would lose their money. If it was heavy, they would lose their lives. Once they encountered one, they would lose all their hard-earned money. It was the first time for many merchants to hear that bandits did not rob or kill people. Instead, they became escorts. Speaking of which, were they really not embezzling? Because there was no competition in the same industry, it was relatively easy for them to accept business. They directly guarded the main road and put on a posture of one man guarding the pass against 10,000 people. They forcefully blackmailed and accepted the escort business. So, were the merchants willing to pay a little money to hire them as escorts, or were they waiting to be robbed? Chapter 6:13. In another room. Enchanting secretly hid some of his food and belongings in a secret place. After making sure that everything was safe, he went back to report as if nothing had happened. He had been forced to deliver a letter. He had not eaten his fill for a few days, and his clothes were simple and crude. That was why he had fainted in the snow and almost lost his life. When he returned to a small village near Qingde County, he was immediately surrounded by a few simple and honest brothers who were loyal to him. Although these brothers were rude and did not know how to read, they had a warm and sincere heart. "Big brother, why did you only come back after so many days? You made me so worried," a dark-faced man said anxiously. Seeing the sincerity in his eyes and the lack of pretense, one could tell that his anxiety was genuine. If it weren't for the others holding him back, he, who had a bad temper, would have rushed out to look for someone long ago. He wouldn't have cared so much. "Big brother, the clothes you're wearing. Did something happen?" And Shui secretly waved his hand, motioning for his brothers to keep quiet. He looked around as if to see if there were any spies around. Seeing this, another strong man spoke up in understanding. "Don't worry, big brother. There are only us brothers here. There's no one else. We can all trust you." And Shui felt very insecure. He had to confirm it himself before he could be at ease. He secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He hurriedly summoned his brothers and trusted subordinates into the house. This small thatched hut was simple and crude, so Enchanting didn't dare to speak loudly. His brows were filled with fatigue, but he still forced himself to stay awake. He spoke earnestly to his brothers. "In my opinion, the Red Lotus group won't be able to hold out for long. The world is too difficult now. As your big brother, even if I don't think for myself, I have to think for your future. If we are tied to the sinking ship of the Red Lotus group, we don't know how we will die in the future." His brothers were simple and honest. The Red Lotus group's brainwashing methods had no effect on them. That was why he could say these words without worry. For these men, the Red Lotus group was a place to stay that provided them with food and clothing. It wasn't their final destination. The honest, dark-faced man opened his mouth and said, "Wherever Big Brother goes, I'll go. I'll follow you for the rest of my life. The Red Lotus group isn't a good place. Let's find another one." The other men were almost as honest. Although they didn't say anything, the dark-faced man had spoken their minds. The other person looked slightly more refined and spoke in a more genteel manner. He said, "What's Big Brother's plan?" "Just say it. We brothers are willing to climb a mountain of swords and dive into a sea of flames. We won't say anything more." And Shui was secretly satisfied. Only then did he reveal his complete plan. The brothers were startled and looked at each other in dismay. For a moment, they couldn't decide what to do. Did their big brother mean to say that he was preparing to set up his own organization and use the Red Lotus group as a stepping stone to establish his own business? The black-faced man was a bit more impulsive, and he was the first to stand up for Enchanting. "Whatever Big Brother does, Little Brother will do." The Tsing-Yi army was openly robbing, while the Red Lotus group was secretly deceiving. They were a nest of snakes and rats, and all of them were King evil. Big Brother is kind-hearted, talented, and capable. It's really unfair for him to be in such a small position. He might as well seize this opportunity and kill him. If he won the bet, he could make his own decisions. If he lost, the worst that could happen was that he would lose his lowly life. What kind of dog's life are we brothers living now? If it weren't for Big Brother taking care of us, the weeds on our graves might be as tall as a man. The black-faced man was extremely emotional. Although his words were very crude, they had struck a sore spot for everyone. If it weren't for Enchanting taking care of them, they would indeed not have survived in the Red Lotus group. Thinking of the frostbite on Enchui's hands and feet, and the fact that he had to share food and clothes with them, their minds were instantly dominated by emotions. The slightly gentle-looking man held back the surging emotions in his chest. Fourth brother is right. If we don't think of a way out now, Big Brother will be dragged down to death sooner or later. Now that there's such a good way out in front of us, if we don't take the risk, we'll definitely regret it in the future. Wasn't it just being a spy and stabbing the Red Lotus group in the back? It wasn't like they couldn't do it. But, someone hesitated. The black-faced man said in a tiger's voice, "What but is there?" The other party was a bit clumsy. After a while, he stammered and finished his sentence. But why did such a good thing fall into our big brother's hands? Could it be a trap? This was indeed what everyone was worried about. They were afraid that Jiang Pingji would go back on her word and burn the bridge after crossing it. However, Enchui said, "We have to believe in this matter. Even if we don't help, do you think these people from the Red Lotus group can defend Qingde County? Although they claim to have 100,000 members, look at them. How many of them can fight and kill? Qingde County really has 20,000 elite troops. It's a bit exaggerated to fight 1 against 10, but it's definitely not a problem for them to fight 1 against 5. If that's the case, do we even have a chance to contribute?" For Jiang Pingji's side, there were only 2 scenarios for attacking Qingde County. One, they could easily take it down. The other, they could expend some effort and lose a certain number of troops before taking it down. In Enchui's opinion, Jiang Pingji was the foolish son of a landlord, but Lu Shi, who stood behind her, was certainly not foolish. Who didn't cherish their reputation in the early stages of a business? Even if Jiang Pingji didn't cherish it, Lu Shi would surely understand. Therefore, going back on his word would definitely not happen. Enchui said solemnly, "Our future depends on this." The more refined man looked worried and troubled. Even if they wanted to do something big, they had to have enough manpower. "Big brother, we'll do as you say, but won't we have too few people?" Enchui took out a heavy pouch from his sleeve and poured out the bulging bag of silver and gold. There was firewood burning in the room, so the light wasn't too dim. When the shiny, white silver was poured out, it sparkled and almost blinded everyone's eyes. Enchui was satisfied, but his expression was solemn as he said, "There's no hurry. There's still some time before spring. We'll plan slowly. Brothers, this matter concerns the lives of all of us, so we must be extremely cautious. We must absolutely not reveal even half a word of this." The men cupped their fists and said in unison, "Don't worry, big brother." As the saying went, money made things easier. Enchui used the money and provisions Jiang Pingji provided to win over another batch of low-level members of the Red Lotus group. On the other hand, Shangyang County had truly been included in Jiang Pingji's sphere of influence. There were many aristocratic families in Shangyang County, but apart from the Feng family, the other aristocratic families were all small in scale. Jiang Pingji didn't have to worry about their thoughts at all. The Feng family had handed Shangyang County over to Jiang Pingji. In reality, they were transferring military power, finances, and government affairs. Jiang Pingji currently couldn't command the local troops in Shangyang County, so she could only transfer a portion of her own troops over. Her territory had doubled, which meant that the workload of her subordinates had also doubled. Naturally, she had to continue recruiting troops and buying horses. Feng Zhen held his forehead. "Well, are you planning to tire us to death? What vacation, what fun, what wild horses that would run free in Shangyang County were all lies. What about being able to rest after being busy for a while? It was all a lie. The truth was that she would be busy for a while every year, and the while would last for a year." Chapter 614. Feng Zhen looked as if he had nothing left to live for. If I continue to believe your words, I'll have forgotten to bring my brain out of the house. Wei Xiai laughed involuntarily at Feng Zhen's ridicule. With the changes in power in Xiangyang County, the gentry clans other than the Feng family were all restless. Why? Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Jiang Pingji lacked manpower, especially capable ones. Due to the current difficulties in education, most scholars came from gentry clans. In other words, if Jiang Pingji were to recruit talents, she would definitely choose from these gentry clans. This was a good opportunity for them to openly meddle in the political affairs of Xiangyang County. As long as they occupied most of the authority, Xiangyang County would still belong to them and not Jiang Pingji, an outsider. Many people had similar conversations, the core of which revolved around Jiang Pingji. That Lu Shi is just a naughty child. He wants us to listen to him. Wishful thinking. If it was Lu Shi, I would be willing to consider it. His son. He's still wet behind the ears. Does he really think he can do whatever he wants just because he has some troops? These gentry clans couldn't understand what was wrong with the Feng family that they were willing to hand over such a large Xiangyang County. It was as if they were bewitched. No matter what, this was a chance for them to make a name for themselves. Who wouldn't want to advance? The Feng family was stupid, but they wouldn't. Someone agreed. Master is right. Lu Shi is still in his 20s. His behavior is childish and his thinking is naive. The Feng family is making a huge mistake by handing Xiangyang County to someone like him. How can Lu Shi manage 2 counties with only the manpower he has? In the end, they would be overwhelmed with work. Wouldn't they still have to recruit talents to fill the ranks? As long as they seized this opportunity, they might have a chance to turn the tables and make Lu Shi a mere figurehead. Not just Xiangyang County, but even Fengyi County that Lu Shi had conquered would become theirs. Many gentry clans had this thought. In the past, with the Feng family suppressing them, they couldn't compete with them. Now that it was a wet-behind-the-ears kid, would they not have a chance? Lu Shi wasn't by their side. They weren't afraid that they couldn't coax the kid. They were all waiting anxiously in the dark. They were waiting for Jiang Pingji to run out of manpower and ask for their help. At that time, it would be the best time for these landowning households to display their talents. Feng Gue was born into an aristocratic family and was used to such schemes. He was afraid that Jiang Pingji did not understand the situation in Xiangyang County, so he kindly reminded her. Although it was impossible for him to be loyal to Jiang Pingji, it was not a problem to kindly remind her. Feng Gue did not make it too obvious. He only hinted vaguely. A lot of landowning households will send invitations to Lanting soon, Jiang Pingji said. I'm so busy that I don't even have time to sleep. Who would be so blind as to send me a visitation card? Even if she sent a visiting card, it was impossible for her to attend. She didn't have the time to do so. Feng Gue laughed and said, Lanting is ultimately a citizen of Hejin and not a native of Xiangyang County. Now that you have taken over Xiangyang County, even though you don't have the title of county governor, you do have the power of county governor. In order to manage a county, you have to place your own trusted aides. However, this will inevitably harm the interests of those people. They are uncertain, so it is normal for them to find an opportunity to worm information out of you. If Jiang Pingji did not appear even once, the people would be anxious and it would easily cause trouble. Feng Gue said, I'm saying this to let you know so that you won't get into trouble in the future. The Feng family had handed over Xiangyang County, but this did not mean that Jiang Pingji had completely taken over the area. She still had to solve the complicated network of interests of the landowning households in Xiangyang County. If she did not handle it well and angered them, they would use violence and refuse to cooperate. Xiangyang County's various government affairs and agencies would be left unattended. Not to mention a few days, even half a day's work would cause unrest, so she had to be mentally prepared. The audience did not understand. Feng Gue was speaking mysteriously. They could not understand him at all. Why was he speaking in riddles? Watching movies today, is there anyone in the streaming room who can explain? Why can't I understand what Feng Gue is saying? Is there something wrong with my IQ? Although I can't understand their conversation, I have a feeling that a storm is brewing. Wonder Woman, why do I feel that Feng Gue's words are easy to understand? To put it bluntly, the streamer is a powerful outsider. In Xiangyang County, other than the colossal Feng family, there are many local tyrants with connections. If she doesn't handle these local tyrants well and they cause trouble, the streamer will suffer. I think Feng Gue is reminding the streamer of this. If it was in their era, Xiangyang County would be considered a first-tier city. In a place like this, even a small official with the size of a sesame seed would be able to squeeze out a lot of fat and greasy oil. Trench Chong Feng, indeed, the local landowning households are very troublesome. They have been operating in Xiangyang County for many years. The streamer is someone who came out of nowhere. If she wants to completely control Xiangyang County, she will definitely have to place her own people in important positions. At the same time, this action will cause the local landowning households to hand over their rights and interests. Robbing people of their wealth is equivalent to killing their parents, not to mention the rights that affect the development of the family. Wanrua, no way, it's so complicated. But why didn't the streamer have this problem when she conquered Fengyi County? Anti-Japanese show Ci Gizi, have you forgotten? Fengyi County has 4 districts, Maolin District, Xiangyang District, Jiaoping District, and Qingan District. Which one of them has not been robbed by the Qingyi army? Besides the country gentry and wealthy merchants, the richest people are the landowning households. Who else would the Qingyi army rob if not them? Precisely because the Qingyi army has already exterminated these people, Jiang Pingji did not face any resistance when she rebuilt Fengyi County. Xiangyang County is different. The power of the landowning households is well preserved. If Jiang Pingji interferes with their interests, there will definitely be a conflict between the two parties. Unless Jiang Pingji is willing to stand in the same trench as them. Yuzhu Hao Shui, according to what you said, the Qingyi army is not useless. At least they helped the streamer get rid of the local power. What should we do now? Why don't the streamer test their bottom line first? If they can accept it, we can pretend to be courteous with them. If Jiang Pingji was not a person with her own ideas, the livestream audience's suggestion would probably be her best choice. Feng Gue revealing this to her was actually subtly indicating to her that the landowning households of Xiangyang County were difficult to deal with. He was warning her not to easily confront them. Unfortunately, Jiang Pingji was not one to be swayed by force or persuasion, let alone threats. If these landowning households knew their place, Jiang Pingji would not touch them. If they were disobedient. She muttered to herself for a while. Thank you, Huaizhang, for telling me about this. I already have a plan in mind. I'll go back and discuss it with the other gentlemen. Feng Gue nodded. The two of them tacitly brushed the matter aside, as if they had never discussed it. Chapter 6:15. What do you mean, my lord? Feng Jin was a native of Xiangyang County. He knew the aristocratic circles of the place very well. Their opinions were secondary. Jiang Pingji's attitude was the most important. If she was weak and chose to yield to the pressure of the aristocratic families in Xiangyang County, they could only suggest that Jiang Pingji appease the emotions of those people and plan for the future. If she was stubborn, Feng Jin naturally had a way to keep them busy and not spare the energy to bother her. Jiang Pingji was their lord. The lord's attitude would greatly affect the strategist's decision. What do I mean? Jiang Pingji smiled. She said, I'm the master of Shangyang County now. Since when is it their turn? If they simply want to help and take advantage of me, it's not that I can't tolerate it. But if they take advantage of me, do you think I can tolerate it? Whatever entered her pocket was hers. It was the same for Shangyang County. She didn't care if these aristocratic families were local tyrants. They had to obediently cower in front of her. If they didn't listen, they couldn't blame her for being ruthless. Wei Ci smiled. According to my lord's temperament, she naturally can't tolerate it. She had always been the one to be bullied by others. When had others ever given her a hard time? Not to mention the aristocratic families in Shangyang County. In her previous life, Jiang Pingji was a bandit with tens of thousands of troops. The Dongqing court couldn't do anything about her. They had no choice but to recruit her. She was appointed as the county magistrate of Hu County with the intention of using the vicious and merciless aristocrats in Hu County to frame her. Who would have thought that she would kill all of them instead? From then on, no one in Hu County dared to question her. If she said one, no one dared to say another. Of course, the beginning of the two lives was different. As the emperor who was born a bandit, she killed whoever she wanted. She killed whoever made a fuss. She didn't care about her reputation at all. She was very willful. Now she was Lu Shi's son. She had a reputation and a shackle. She couldn't be as willful and ruthless as she had been in her previous life. She couldn't fight. She could only use her wits. However, no matter how much a person changed, their style would never change. Even if she used her wits, it would still be terrifying. Feng Zhen coughed softly. He hugged the hot water in his arms tightly and took a sip of hot tea to slightly dispel the chill in his body. Once my lord starts like this, how will she be different from a puppet in the future? He had to be more forceful in this matter. In terms of money and grain, the lord's wealth may not be comparable to that of a country, but it is more than enough to feed 2 counties. Why do you need their support? The only shortcoming is talents. According to the lord's current foundation, there is indeed a shortage of talents. This is also a problem. No matter how talented Feng Zhen and the others were, they were still just a few people. They could not be compared to a few hundred people. Jiang Pingji did not lack top-notch talents, nor did she lack the most basic talents. What she lacked, however, were intermediate talents who were not as good as the best but were better than the worst. Even if Jiang Pingji had found a way to open an academy and nurture some useful talents. Unfortunately, they didn't have enough time. They hadn't even finished the first semester. It would take another 2 to 3 years before they could put it to use. If she accepted the talent assistance from the local aristocrats, Jiang Pingji's team could be considered to have taken shape. However, there is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Everything comes with a price. The powerful gentry clans could secretly control the succession of the throne. Jiang Pingji had only progressed so far. If the gentry clans took advantage of the loophole and controlled the right to speak, she would only be another Dongqing emperor, no matter how well she lived in the future. She would always be under the control of the gentry clans. This topic was somewhat awkward for Feng Zhen. Who asked him to be born in such a high position? However, as a strategist, he had to think of Jiang Pingji's immediate interests. Why not let them restrain each other? We can temporarily maintain a more balanced state. After a few years, they can recover, Feng Zhen suggested. The gentry clans in Shangyang County are complicated. There are interests and disputes between each family. If we make use of them appropriately, we don't have to worry about them stirring up trouble. Jiang Pingji frowned as she listened. Wei Ci and Feng Zhen were both foreigners. They did not understand the local situation as well as Feng Zhen. Feng Jin's suggestion was considered more feasible at the moment. The balance of power was also one of the keys to governing. Huayu's suggestion is feasible. However, Xi Xiao and I do not understand the situation in Xiangyang County. If we do this, we can only hand this matter over to Huayu. I'm afraid it will be more difficult. Feng Zhen was all smiles as he held the hot water in his hands. It was as if he could see the scene of Feng Jin being busy all year and not being able to return home. Feng Jin smiled bitterly to himself. He could not stand the sight of Feng Zhen, the prodigal son. He did not expect Feng Zhen to witness his antics. However, Jiang Pingji said, Huayu's suggestion is a good idea. However, this is also treating the symptoms and not the root cause. Although they have conflicts and disputes, they are not irreconcilable. If you play with balance too much, you will eventually lose control. Instead of doing this, why not take drastic measures? She still had no way to make the local gentry clans in Xiangyang County a mere figurehead, but she could weaken them step by step. Drastic measures. Although Feng Jin was born in a gentry clan, the Feng family was watching from the sidelines. He did not need to be conflicted. His lord's interests were the direction he should go. Feng Zhen asked, how do we take drastic measures? Don't stick to one pattern. Select talents. Jiang Pingji's eyes shone as she said, talents are also divided into different grades. What we need are not virtuous people who can rule the world. Our standards are not that high. In Xiangyang County, other than the gentry clans, everyone else is an idiot, right? No matter if they are poor or from a humble background, regardless of their status, as long as they are talented, virtuous, and capable, they can all be recruited. Fengyi County did not have such conditions, but Xiangyang County was different. There was a strong learning culture there. There was no lack of talents. Not only did she want to open an academy to nurture her own talents, but she also wanted to recruit talents that could be used. In this era, to become an official, one needed family background, appearance, virtue, and ability. Among them, family background was the most important. If there were no special circumstances, official positions could be inherited. To put it bluntly, it was better to be born well than to be well educated, and it was better to have good parents than to be born well. Ability was not important at all. Jiang Pingji's words were, in a sense, a challenge to the entire human resource system of this era. Feng Jin secretly glanced at Wei Ci and Feng Zhen's expressions. Both of them looked slightly agitated. He secretly sighed in his heart but did not say anything. Feng Zhen asked, my lord wants to replace all the people? Jiang Pingji snorted and said, replace all of them. How is that possible? I don't want to be poisoned to death when I go out and drink a cup of water. Replacing all of them meant completely robbing the interests of the gentry clans. It would be strange if they did not go crazy. Wei Ci said, my lord, I'm afraid you want to first replace those who are not important and wait for them to familiarize themselves with the situation before making any plans. Apart from not alerting or angering the gentry clans, another important reason was that the newly recruited talents were not familiar with their positions and would easily cause trouble. It was better to leave them in an unimportant place to gain experience for a while before transferring them. This period of time would be enough for Jiang Pingji to gain a firm foothold. This was not only taking drastic measures, but it was also a delaying tactic. The gentry clans were not afraid of 20,000 troops. What about 50,000 or even 100,000? Chapter 6:16. The news of the change of ownership of Xiangyang County spread quickly. Huang Song, who was far away in Diyang district of Maota County in Haozhou, knew about it. Huang Song had just received the news and hurriedly looked for his trusted subordinates to discuss it. Under the management of Feng Ju, Qing Jing, and a few other newly recruited strategists, Huang Song was still the district magistrate of Diang district on the surface, but in reality, he had slowly infiltrated the entire Mauda County. Coupled with the eloquence of the strategists, the most difficult aristocratic families were settled one by one. With steady progress, the seemingly unattractive Huang Song now had some capital. Huang Song was especially concerned about Jiang Pingji's situation, probably because they were close in age and used to be friends who played together. Now that he had just received the news, he could not wait to discuss it with his strategists. Feng Ju was not surprised by the news of the change of ownership of Shangyang County. After all, his second brother was in Jiang Pingji's camp. This was harmony. Not only that, but she also had a natural geographical advantage. Fengyi County and Shangyang County were both within Wanzhou. This was geographical advantage. Moreover, Shangyang County was not an advantage for the Feng family, which had a weak military force. Instead, it was a burden. This was timing. In this way, Jiang Pingji had timing, geographical advantage, and harmony. It was only a matter of time before Shangyang County fell into her hands. If Huang Song's territory could be in the north and be close to Shangyang County, Feng Ju would also have the confidence to convince the Feng family. Now, the matter was settled. His tightly knitted brows relaxed. Feng Ju had already put on a crown. His face had lost its childishness, and he appeared calm and steady. He comforted him unhurriedly, "Don't worry, my lord. I know what the situation in Shangyang County is. If Lu Shi takes over now, he will lose everything if he doesn't handle it well. The Feng family has retired, and the other aristocratic families are no longer suppressed. Lu Shi will probably be overwhelmed with work." Even in a small Diang district, the various forces were intricate, not to mention the circle of aristocratic families in Shangyang County. Although they were not large in scale, their ancestors had been operating in Shangyang County for generations, and they had a deep foundation. Compared to Diang district, the difficulty of conquering Shangyang County was definitely more than 10 times higher. Qing Jing frowned and said disapprovingly, "I don't know much about Lu Shi, but his advisors Wei Ci, Yang Si, Feng Zhen, Feng Jin, none of them are easy to deal with. Lu Shi's foundation is gradually stabilizing. Shangyang County may not be able to make him stumble." When Jiang Pingji was studying in Langyi Academy, Qing Jing had already left to take up an official post. He only stayed in the academy for a few days in 3 years, and it was to congratulate Master Yuanjing on his birthday. Therefore, the relationship between Qing Jing and Jiang Pingji was limited to a nodding acquaintance. They both knew of such a person, but they did not have a deep understanding of each other. It was fine if Qing Jing did not understand Jiang Pingji, but he understood his junior brother, Wei Ci. He understood the few friends Wei Ci had. They were not famous, but each of them was a dragon among men. Even if she could only get one, the Lord would be overjoyed, not to mention a few of them. Shangyang County might be a tough nut to crack for others, but for Lu Shi, who had a strong and powerful faction, it was nothing more than a stumbling block on the road. It was so small that he could just step over it. It was unrealistic to hope that Shangyang County would be able to hold Lu Shi back. Feng Ju sighed to himself. He and Qing Jing still did not have the slightest tacit understanding. He spoke ambiguously, but was it not to obscure the main point, to appease Huang Song's inner anxiety, and to motivate him? Qing Jing was an honest man, but he said whatever was on his mind. Wasn't this boosting others' morale and diminishing his own prestige? Feng Ju's mind spun, and he suddenly thought of something. He interrupted Huang Song's overthinking. He said to Qing Jing, "I remember that Yumo seems to have an eldest nephew who holds a post in Haozhou." Qing Jing's eldest nephew, Qing Qing, whose courtesy name was Wenfu. After Huang Song heard this, his gaze turned to Qing Jing, and he asked in surprise, "Yumo's eldest nephew? Why hadn't he heard of this? Qingjing replied calmly, reporting to my lord, I do have a nephew who holds a post in Haozhou. Qingcheng was the district magistrate of Suiyan County in Fufeng County of Haozhou. Because he did not like the intrigue in the officialdom, and he had no intention of climbing the ranks, he used his family's influence to obtain the position of district magistrate of Suiyan County. He had been in this position for more than 10 years, and he had never moved from this position. Qingjing was stunned. He did not know why Feng Zhu suddenly mentioned Qingqing. After thinking for a while, he instantly understood Feng Zhu's intentions, and he was slightly displeased. Without waiting for Feng Zhu to speak, Qingjing said, If Huijie wants Wenfu to seek refuge with the Lord, I'm afraid it'll be difficult. I've already written a letter to Wenfu, but Wenfu is determined, and I can't easily persuade him. Moreover, his ambition isn't here, so there's no point in recruiting him. Although Qingqing was almost a generation older than Qingjing, his eldest nephew was still his eldest nephew. As an uncle, he had to show the attitude of protecting his junior. If Qingqing was unwilling to seek refuge with Huang Song, could Qingjing force him? Admittedly, if Qingqing was willing to help Huang Song, as the district magistrate of Suiyan County in Fufeng County of Haozhou, he could provide Huang Song with great convenience. He could even become a springboard for Huang Song to encroach on Fufeng County. However, since Qingqing was unwilling, Qingjing naturally would not force him. Feng Zhu looked embarrassed. He did not expect Qingjing to speak so bluntly. This caused the atmosphere in the hall to become slightly stagnant. After the meeting, Feng Zhu went to look for Qingjing in private. Huijie, you don't go to a temple for no reason. Just say what you want. Qingjing was too upright. Although he was clever, his style of doing things tended to be more rigid. Feng Zhu also went straight to the point. Zhu wants to help the Lord plot for the entire Haozhou. The territory of Haozhou naturally included Suiyan County under Qingcheng's rule. Qingjing said, Of course. If the Lord wants to advance further, Haozhou must be obtained. But you said that Qingqing is unwilling to help the Lord. Qingjing frowned when he heard this. What was the conflict between Qingcheng's unwillingness to help Huang Song and Huang Song's plot for Haozhou? If Huang Song had the ability to conquer Haozhou, Qingqing could just resign and live in seclusion. He did not have to work under Huang Song. Feng Zhu faintly had a headache. Qingjing still did not understand what he was implying. What I mean is, if Yumo's eldest nephew doesn't have this intention, he should resign and leave as soon as possible before the Lord conquers Haozhou. If Huang Song's influence grew stronger and he slowly controlled Haozhou, Qingqing would not be able to leave even if he wanted to. Yang Si had flown away under Huang Song's nose. This matter had already traumatized the latter. According to Huang Song's temper, those who could not be used by him could not be used by others either. Having one example like Yang Si was enough. Since it was still early, Feng Zhu directly said it. In the future, Feng Zhu did not want to see Qingjing and the Lord, Huang Song, become estranged because of Qingqing. Qingjing was silent for a moment. He cupped his hands and bowed. Thank you for the reminder. Chapter 6:17. It was a chilly winter. It was snowing in the north. With Jiang Pingji's financial and food support, and Chui's work of recruiting people in the Red Lotus group went very smoothly. And Chui was a smart man. Even if he had to recruit and buy the hearts of the people at the bottom of the Red Lotus group, he didn't let his guard down. He didn't pick people who were very eye-catching. He specifically picked people who could be useful but had a low presence and were more reliable. Unknowingly, he had already won over hundreds of people. On the other side, Jiang Pingji put the focus of this winter's work on 3 things: recruiting talents, recruiting soldiers, and training troops. The first task was thrown to Feng Jin and Wei Ci. The former was familiar with the situation in Xiangyang County, while the latter was meticulous and methodical in his work. With the two of them working together, Jiang Pingji didn't have to worry that no one would take the bait. The second task was given to Feng Jin. Jiang Pingji had just taken over Xiangyang County. Her territory had doubled in size out of nowhere. The 20,000 soldiers and horses that were considered plentiful were not enough. It was imperative to recruit more soldiers and buy more horses. Feng Jin was too lazy. He hugged his blanket and slept until noon in the middle of winter. Jiang Pingji couldn't stand it anymore, so she simply gave him heavy work. What if he couldn't finish or slacked off halfway? For the whole year next year, he wouldn't get a drop of wine. Feng Jin's already pale face suddenly turned as white as a sheet when he heard Jiang Pingji's words. With a lord like this, Feng Jin wanted to jump ship at any moment. Forbidding a prodigal son from drinking. What did humans do? However, his thin and small arms couldn't win against Jiang Pingji's powerful legs. Feng Jin could only do as she said. After a few days, heavy eye bags appeared under his eyes. He secretly bit his handkerchief at Wei Ci. Zixiao, according to this situation, will the 7 days of rest during the new year still count? Wei Ci comforted him gently. A gentleman keeps his word. My lord doesn't make promises easily. Once she makes a promise, she will definitely keep it. However, Jiang Pingji wasn't a gentleman. She was a woman. Wei Ci silently swallowed his words back into his stomach. His face was still smiling like a lily, a man with his own background music. Feng Jin had only joined this group in the middle of the year. He didn't know the practices of previous years, so he reluctantly believed Wei Ci. To be honest, recruiting soldiers was not a hard task, but Jiang Pingji pursued the path of elite soldiers. When other people recruited soldiers, they trained for a month or 2, or even 3 to 5 days before they could be deployed to the battlefield. She was different. Winter training lasted for 3 months, summer training for 3 months, spring plowing and autumn harvesting, and daily training went on day after day. According to Feng Jin's understanding, Jiang Pingji had 20,000 elite soldiers under her command. Every soldier had to go through a rigorous training period before they entered the battlefield. In Jiang Pingji's words, a soldier who had not undergone rigorous training could not be considered a soldier. An unqualified soldier was not suitable for the battlefield. It was more suitable for him to go home and drink milk from his mother. Such a soldier would be cannon fodder on the battlefield. Apart from sacrificing his own life, what else could he do? Therefore, there was a certain threshold for Jiang Pingji to recruit soldiers. Not everyone could enter. As the person in charge of this mission, Feng Jin was in charge of it. He also needed to register every recruit who successfully applied. After a few days, Feng Jin felt like he couldn't even straighten his right hand. He had held the brush for too long, and his fingers were stiff. By the way, you haven't found the right person yet. Even a carefree prodigal like Feng Jin couldn't help but go berserk when faced with such a heavy workload. He finally understood why Qiguan Rang, who was in charge of the household registration department, always had a deadpan expression on his face, as if everyone owed him 1,000,000 strings of coins. Wei Ci and Feng Jin leisurely sipped their tea. No rush, no rush. The net has been cast. I have a feeling that the rewards this time will be bountiful. Feng Jin wanted to spit on him. I'd be a fool to believe you. They recruited talents. To put it bluntly, they held all kinds of poetry gatherings and invited the scholars of Xiangyang County to participate. On the surface, they only talked about romance and not politics. In reality, they used this opportunity to understand the temperament, abilities, and talents of the scholars. If they felt that it was not bad, they would test the other party's willingness in private. What made Fengzhen most envious was that all the expenses were paid by Jiang Pingji. Feng Jin and Wei Ci enjoyed it at public expense. Because of this, Fengzhen couldn't help but suspect that the two of them were deliberately slacking off so that they could enjoy it longer. F***ck. These two animals were so shameless. Why didn't they bring him for such a good thing? If they didn't want to bring him, then so be it. Why didn't Fengzhen see a single talent for half a month? No talent meant that Fengzhen had no helpers for his work. If you guys slack off, be careful that my lord will complain about you. Feng Jin couldn't help but laugh. Not only was he not angry, but he was happy. What did this mean? It meant that Fengzhen was already suffocating from the heavy workload. He was exhausted from working overtime. As for the third task, training the troops, Jiang Pingji directly threw it to the generals. Similarly, the female troops were all trained by Jiang Nongqin. In the previous battles, there were a few female troops who performed well. They were all praised and promoted. Now, they were also acting as instructors to train the new female troops. However, Shangyang County was a special area. It was prejudiced against female troops, so there weren't many female troops recruited. There were only about 1,000 of them. To be able to recruit more than 1,000 people, it was because too many people couldn't afford to keep them. They sent them over dubiously. On the other hand, the recruitment of male troops went smoothly. The total number of men reached 8,000. You're really something. Zishi's ability is really impressive. How long has it been? You've already recruited so many people? Jiang Pingji was surprised. Fengzhen smiled bitterly. He admitted that he was capable, but he didn't dare to take all the credit for this matter. My lord, you're exaggerating. How is this true ability? It's clearly because my lord is too generous and the conditions are too good. Although Shangyang County hadn't been conquered by the Tsingyi army or the Red Lotus Group, it had been besieged for a long time. Moreover, there was a great drought this summer. The entire year's harvest wasn't high. The people's lives were poor. Some people's food was mixed with pig's feed. Why was Jiang Pingji said to be generous? The recruitment notice she gave clearly stated that the troops had 3 meals a day. Each meal consisted of 2 bowls of rice, 1 vegetable dish, 1 meat dish, and 1 soup. Afraid that the people wouldn't understand, the notice also stated the weight of the 2 bowls of rice and the ingredients for the meat and vegetable dishes. The notice had 200 words. 160 words were recipes, and the other 40 words were recruitment requirements. This was probably the weirdest recruitment notice Fengzhen had ever seen in his life. Jiang Pingji obediently recruited and trained the troops. She didn't make any moves against the aristocrats of Shangyang County. This instead made the latter suspicious. They were afraid that she would launch a surprise attack. In the end, Jiang Pingji only changed some unimportant positions. There weren't any lucrative positions. The people who were replaced were still the poor local scholars. Although it was a little painful, it was still within the acceptable range of the local aristocrats. Seeing that the end of the year was approaching, Jiang Pingji was doing the year-end statistics. The messenger outside reported that the nominal county chief of Shangyang County had come to visit. She thought about the date. It wasn't the time to pay a New Year's greeting, was it? Invite him in. Jiang Pingji said. The county chief brought her an opened letter. When she opened it, it was stamped with the words, "Blessed by the heavens, I will live long and prosper." The imperial jade seal. She was surprised. She quickly scanned through the contents of the letter. Chapter 6:18. Has the battle in Qinzhou become so serious? Wei Xiai and the others were urgently summoned by Jiang Pingji. They had just sat down when she handed them a letter. After reading through the contents of the letter, her jade-like face darkened. She involuntarily tightened her grip on the letter, leaving a mark on it. Even though Feng Zhen was the last to arrive, he was impatient and couldn't wait to send the message. Without caring about his image, he moved closer to Wei Xiai. After seeing it clearly, Feng Zhen finally understood Wei Xi's astonishment. This is the Emperor's rescue. It can't be fake, right? Wei Xiai shook his head and passed the letter to Feng Jin, who had been waiting for a long time. The seal at the end of the letter is indeed the Imperial Jade Seal. Receive the mandate of the heavens, live forever and prosper. Other than the Emperor, who would dare to use these words? Feng Zhen sneered. Prince Changshu besieged Qinzhou in the name of ridding the Emperor of evil. In order to protect himself, the Emperor summoned the Meng family of Zhangzhou to lead their troops into the capital. This Meng family is interesting, betraying Prince Changshu's forces at the last minute. Isn't it enough that you've suffered a loss once? Now you've sent out an order to rescue the Emperor to all parts of the country, summoning your officials to lead troops to save the Emperor. Isn't the Emperor afraid that there are people with bad intentions among those who respond to the rescue? In layman's terms, the monarch is in trouble, and the subjects are mobilizing their troops to rescue the Emperor. Prince Changshu used the name of cleaning up the Emperor's side, but in fact, it was also a form of protecting the Emperor. It was just that Prince Changshu did not have good intentions. The Meng family of Zhangzhou also came to rescue the Emperor, but in the end, they defected to Prince Changshu's camp at the last minute, which was equivalent to the Emperor shooting himself in the foot. Feng Jin frowned and said, if the Emperor doesn't do this, he will lose his life. Although there were risks in summoning the whole world to rescue the Emperor, at least they could use the officials who came to rescue the Emperor to restrain Prince Changshu, who was at the peak of his power. If I'm lucky, I might be able to turn the situation around. Feng Zhen laughed and said harshly, even your roots are rotten, and you still want to come back from the brink of death. The royal family of Dongqing was like a rotten and withered towering tree. Its insides had long been hollowed out by pests, and its roots buried deep underground were also rotten and dead. Even the best gardener would not be able to save such a big tree. The royal family of Dongqing issued an edict to the world to rescue the king. Apart from dragging the whole of Dongqing into the quagmire of war, what other purpose did it serve? You're dreaming if you want to take this opportunity to make a comeback. Feng Zhen raised a hand to pick at his ear, then returned to his seat. He sat lazily, as if he didn't have any bones. Feng Jin carefully read the contents of the letter and did not miss a single word. After reading it, he asked Jiang Pingji, what do you think, my lord? Rescue the Emperor? Or was he pretending to be deaf and dumb? Jiang Pingji said, I haven't decided yet. Even though the royal family has long been in decline and they no longer live up to their name is still there. As a subject who has received the king's edict, it is only right that I accept the edict and rush to their aid. It's just that this isn't a good season, so I don't really want to go. She frowned, but her expression did not show the slightest hesitation. It's precisely because it's hard to make a decision that I want to hear your opinions before deciding whether or not to get involved. Sending troops to protect the Emperor meant that all the forces in Dongqing, big and small, would gather in Qinzhou. When the time came, the elites would gather, and the heroes would meet. There would be a lot of talents, and perhaps future opponents would be among them. This was a good opportunity to poach someone. Jiang Pingji naturally did not want to miss such a lively event. However, just as she had said, it was not the right time to rescue the Emperor. If she went, it might even be a bad thing. The original plan was to recover Qingde County in the spring of next year. With Enchui supporting her from within the Red Lotus Group, coupled with the fact that the troops under her were all elites with extraordinary combat power, taking down Qingde County should be a sure thing. When the time came, she would absorb the power of the Red Lotus Group and further expand her own strength. Then, with the expanded military force, she would suppress the power of the aristocratic families in Xiangyang County. Finally, she would replace the talents who had been trained with important positions. In this way, not only would she be able to occupy Qingde County, but she would also be able to completely control Xiangyang County. At this point, the entire territory of Wanzhou would be under her control. Dongxing only had 6 states and 21 counties, but the father and son of the Lu family had already occupied Wanzhou and Chongzhou. In the future, the power to contend for hegemony was already in embryonic form. This set of plans was linked to each other. If everything went according to plan, the situation would be very good. If she mobilized troops to rescue the emperor, it would be a little difficult to make ends meet. If she was unlucky and her nest was raided, her family's assets would be gone. Feng Jin muttered, "But if you don't go, I'm afraid you'll become the target of public criticism and a live target." Jiang Pingji sighed softly. The 3 strategists were still thinking. She secretly opened the bullet screen in the streaming room to see the opinions of the idle viewers. "Little angels, I'm so disappointed. So it's this rescue of the emperor. I thought the emperor was going to confer the title of Rescue the Emperor. Good luck Gaokao, the streamer is encroaching on the entire territory of Wanzhou as a district magistrate. To put it bluntly, she's a rebel and a traitor, yet she's being conferred the title of a king. However, she can use this opportunity to solidify the title of Governor of Wanzhou. Sending troops to rescue the emperor isn't for nothing. There must be benefits." Yu Yuxing, I agree with the comment above. This is obviously a good opportunity. After all, the streamer's power is not weak now. If she can learn from Boss Chow and use the tactic of holding the emperor hostage and ordering disobedient subjects, that would be even more cool. Streamer, you're my goddess. Kneeling for a wave of monthly tickets. No, if things were really that simple, would the streamer and her friends still be so conflicted here? Obviously, the 4 people present could use their intelligence to crush the idle viewers in the streaming room. If even these idle fish in the water could understand, how could they not? In the end, her old friend, Liu Siji Lianming, told her what Jiang Pingji was conflicted about and embarrassed about. Liu Siji Lianming, going to rescue the emperor. There are benefits, but there are also disadvantages. The disadvantage is that Qingde County has not been conquered yet. There are still restless local aristocrats in Xiangyang County that have not been completely tamed. If something goes wrong in the process of rescuing the emperor, the streamer's nest will be in danger. Not going to rescue the emperor. Even better, the Dongqing royal family is not finished yet. This can be seen from their imperial edict to rescue the emperor. The streamer disobeys the imperial edict and solidifies the title of a rebel and a traitor. When the time comes, if the Dongqing royal family makes a comeback, the streamer will be the first to be dealt with. Of course, if the comeback fails and Prince Changshu ascends to the throne, Prince Changshu will still target Jiang Pingji. Disobeys the imperial edict and rejects the imperial edict. What else could she be if not a rebel and a traitor? There was science and analysis in the streaming room, but most of it was the bullet screen of bored onlookers. After looking around, Jiang Pingji didn't find anything useful. She pursed her lips and continued to close the bullet screen. On the other side, the 3 strategists had already reached a tacit agreement in their hearts. Wei Ci had mingled with the bandit Jiang Pingji in his previous life. Under the influence of what he saw and heard, his heart was even more free than Feng Zhen's. For example, at this moment, Feng Zhen was still limited by his old way of thinking, but Wei Ci had an idea. However, the idea he gave was ingenious, but to put it bluntly, it was really a bluntly idea. My lord, I think there is no conflict in this matter. Wei Xi thought about it and said, my lord wants to rescue the emperor, but you're afraid that it will delay the battle against Qingde County in the spring of next year. If that's the case, why not take Qingde County in advance? Maybe we can even make it in time for the spring plowing next year. Chapter 6:19. War in Winter. Brother, it will be the new year soon. Have you checked the almanac? Do you know what New Year means? Wasn't there supposed to be 7 days off during the New Year? Eaten by a dog. If they started the war in winter, even if it was a blitzkrieg, they would not be able to take it down without 2 to 3 months. This meant that they had to fight until the beginning of spring. If they were lucky, they would spend the new year in their tents. If they were unlucky, they would have to go to war. While other people were having New Year's Eve dinner, they were chopping off people's heads and lingering with the dead. Feng Zhen imagined the scene after Qingde County was conquered and felt a throbbing pain in his chest. His eyes rolled back and he let out a short and exaggerated "ah" before collapsing onto the carpet. Because he was born with a weak constitution, coupled with the hanshi powder he consumed after courting death, Feng Zhen's face was pale. Looking at his sickly appearance, it really looked like he was suffering from an illness and was extremely agitated. However, he could deceive others, but not Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji didn't seem to understand. She asked him directly, "Where did you go the past few days? Did your kidneys become weak?" He couldn't even sit properly. Wasn't that because his back was hurting and his kidney was weak? Feng Zhen almost choked on his breath. He had no choice but to put on an expression that said he would rather die than live. He crawled up with his dead fish eyes wide open. Ever since he arrived at the Black Den, where all the jackals, wolves, tigers and leopards gathered, he did not even take hanshi powder. He also quit drinking alcohol, not to mention going out to look for girls. Sob, 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 the Lord even slandered him for having a weak kidney. Feng Zhen felt extremely wronged. My lord, isn't it inappropriate to start a war in the middle of winter? First of all, it's close to the new year, the soldiers will be reunited with their families. If we were to separate at this time, it would be too cruel. Second of all, it's a world of ice and snow, the snow has sealed off the mountains, it's difficult for the troops to march. The soldiers are tired and the horses are tired, it's really not suitable to mobilize the troops. Today was an agricultural society, and the timing of a war was closely related to the agricultural fields. Spring required spring plowing. If they delayed spring plowing because of the war, this year's harvest would be gone. Wouldn't they have nothing to eat next year? Summer crops are planted in summer, the crops are not yet ripe, and the weather is unbearably hot. This is also not a good season for fighting. The winters were extremely cold, especially in the northern regions. Snow and ice filled the air, and the conditions for marching and fighting were extremely difficult. Whether it was offense or defense, fighting in winter was simply asking for trouble. Along the way, the most suitable time to start the war was after the spring plowing, before the summer planting, after the autumn harvest, and before the midwinter. These two periods of time were neither hot nor cold, suitable for stirring up trouble. What about now? It would be the new year in a few days. Was the weather suitable for fighting? Feng Zhen's words were not unreasonable, but the current situation was unique and they had no choice but to fight. Feng Jin automatically ignored the clown Feng Zhen. At first, he didn't have a good impression of this prodigal son. But after getting to know him better, he wasn't that annoying. Especially when Feng Zhen also experienced the pain of working overtime and looked like he was better off dead, Feng Jin's heart felt unusually balanced. He cupped his hands and bowed, then stepped out of the ranks to report, I think that Zixiao's suggestion is a good plan. Our Lord has a good governance. This year's autumn harvest has been pretty good. The district headquarters granary is already full of rice, and there is no shortage of provisions in the military camp. It was currently the 12th lunar month of the year, but the soldiers were diligent in their training and could be considered as elites. If a battle were to break out, they wouldn't lose much of their combat strength. Furthermore, woolen shirts were very popular. Every soldier had 2 sets to change into. In addition, the Lord had assigned them leather armor. Even in today's weather, marching and fighting wouldn't be hindered. I think that this plan is feasible. Fighting in the middle of winter was indeed difficult, but everything had its pros and cons. Their soldiers had a hard time attacking in the winter, but the Red Lotus group had a hard time defending. If the wind and snow were compared to a negative state, Jiangpingji's army would be weakened by 10%, while the Red Lotus group would be weakened by 50%. Why did he say that? Listen to the analysis. Jiangpingji had many captives. After screening, most of them were thrown to Xiangyang district to mine iron ore. She found craftsmen who could smelt iron and craftsmen who could make armor. She used the current armor specifications as a reference and designed a set of military equipment. While ensuring safety and defense, she tried to reduce the load as much as possible and save more materials to make more armor and weapons. Excluding the nearly 10,000 new recruits recruited in Xiangyang County, most of the original 20,000 soldiers were wearing armor with defensive functions. Their weapons were standardized and could be considered elites. On the other hand, most of the members of the Red Lotus group were dressed in rags and had zero defense. They had all kinds of weapons in their hands: long sticks, kitchen knives, axes, carrying poles, choppers. Some even held stones, but most of them were bare-handed. In terms of numbers, the 100,000 members of the Red Lotus group were indeed terrifying. In terms of combat power, with the quality of the Red Lotus group, the elites on Jiangpingji's side could fight 1 against 10. They were both fighting in winter, but their side had the absolute upper hand, not to mention that she had an insider like Enchanting. For the sake of 7 days of rest, Fengzhen still wanted to struggle a little. But, Wei Ci added, my lord has specially chosen the cold winter and hot summer days to train her troops. Fighting in winter is indeed difficult, but it's not impossible to fight. Fengzhen was in complete despair. Feng continued, if we can conquer Qingde County before the beginning of spring, we can still make it in time for the spring plowing. If the spring plowing went smoothly, it meant that there was hope for this year's harvest. The food in Wanzhou was enough to support them in any battle. Wei Ci said with a smile, if we can conquer all of Wanzhou before the rescue of the emperor, perhaps my lord's title will become Wanzhou's governor. In terms of military strength, Jiangpingji was definitely in the top 3 among those who came to rescue the emperor. The emperor of Dongqing had a favor to ask, so he had to give her some benefits. Jiangpingji was already the de facto governor of Wanzhou. If the emperor gave her some benefits, it would most likely be to make her legitimate. She was the only governor of a province who was younger than 20 years old. Not to mention Dongqing, even in the previous dynasty, Xia, there might not be a second governor like her. Feng raised his eyebrows, and a smile appeared at the corner of his lips. According to this rhythm, the situation would be very good. Chongzhou and Wanzhou shared a border. Together with Hu County, when Lu Shi retired behind the scenes, it meant that Jiangpingji would occupy 1/3 of Dongqing's territory. The biggest threat was that the northern borderline had suffered a great loss of vitality due to the horse plague and was unable to move south. No one could stop Jiangpingji from expanding her territory. Fengzhen raised his hand to his forehead and muttered, I'm still thinking about the 7 days of rest during the new year. Wei Ci said in a low voice, you can rest when you're done. Fengzhen snorted coldly. If I believe you again, I'll read the 2 words Fengzhen backwards. The conversation between the two could not be hidden from Jiangpingji's ears. she ruthlessly stabbed Feng Zhen in the heart. Zisher is all alone, and he doesn't have any beautiful wives or concubines at home. Whether it's the New Year holiday or not, isn't he always alone? Feng Zhen, my lord, this is hurtful. Although he is single, this is not an excuse to swallow his vacation. Jiang Pingji cruelly exposed the truth and placed the bloody truth in front of Feng Zhen. She said, moreover, there are 7 days of rest during the new year. All the entertainment venues are closed. Where are you going to find entertainment? You'll still be home alone. It's so boring. If you're busy with government affairs, at least the chef can prepare 3 meals a day for you. Go home. Are you planning to starve to death at home? Feng Zhen, no matter how desperate Feng Zhen was, the war in the winter had become a reality. In less than 2 days, Feng Zhen knocked his head on the table that was piled up like a mountain and said weakly. Chapter 620. War in Winter. When Feng Shi heard this news, he almost thought that there was something wrong with his ears and that he had heard wrongly. He asked Feng Jin in private, it's the middle of winter now, and the new year is approaching. It's a bit. Feng Gui swallowed the words he was about to say, but Feng Jin already understood what his elder brother was trying to convey. Feng Jin heaved a long sigh and said helplessly, the emperor has issued an edict for the world to come to his aid. My lord, as a subject, naturally can't disobey the edict. But if we obey the order to rescue the emperor, all of the lord's previous efforts will be wasted. If we don't get rid of the Red Lotus group, it will be difficult for the people of Wanzhou to live in peace. In order to get the best of both worlds, we have no choice but to start the war now. We want to end the war as soon as possible and send troops to Qinzhou to respond to the imperial edict. Even in front of his elder brother, Feng Jin still managed to put on a good show. Jiang Pingji chose to start the war in winter not for her own selfish desires, nor was it to expand her territory. She did it for the good of the people of Wanzhou. She had a sincere patriotic heart. She was an important, good, and virtuous minister that was hard to find in Dongqing. As for the truth, well, it was fine as long as the brothers knew it in their hearts. Feng Gui's lips curled into a faint smile, with a hint of mockery in his voice, rescue the emperor, for the royal family of Dongqing, regardless of whether they succeeded or failed, the final outcome could not change the fact that they were about to perish. How could a dynasty that was rotten to the core continue? It was unknown whether this rescue would allow the royal family to struggle at death's door or hasten their death. Feng Jin furrowed his brows with a thoughtful look on his face. My lord had no other choice this time. If not for the interference of the rescue mission, my lord would have followed the plan to recover Qingde County after the spring plowing. Now, I can only bring the time forward and give it a try. Feng Guo lowered his gaze for a moment before he probed, Huayu, how confident is Lu Lanting in this battle? If she won, Jiang Pingji, whose power had expanded once again, would be able to deal with the local aristocrats in Shangyang County and completely control Wanzhou. If she lost, then the local gentry clans of Shangyang County would probably cause her some trouble. People strive for higher places, and water flows to lower places. The noble families could last for hundreds or even thousands of years not only because of their good family traditions, but also because they had to make precise investments and pick sides. If the gentry could not see the future, Jiang Pingji would have to be careful of the knives in the dark. I don't dare to say 100%, but at least 90%. Feng Jin flicked his sleeve with one hand and brewed tea with the other. The two brothers sat opposite each other in front of the window, brewing tea and wine as they talked about political affairs. Although this incident happened suddenly, the Lord has always liked to make early preparations. This year's autumn harvest was pretty good, and the granary was already full of food. The army's provisions were plentiful, the horses were strong and healthy, and the soldiers were well trained, so their resistance to the cold was extremely strong. In comparison, the Red Lotus group is a motley crew that can't even be shown in public. With such a great disparity, as long as my lord doesn't destroy the city walls, we will definitely win. When Feng Gue heard the first sentence, he secretly sucked in a breath of cold air. Even if he was the reincarnation of the god of war, he wouldn't dare to say that his chances of winning a battle were that high. After all, a battle was about the right time, the right place, and the right people. After listening to Feng Jin's analysis, Feng Gue could vaguely understand where his confidence came from. Looks like I've underestimated Lu Lanting. Feng Gue and Feng Jin sat facing each other, sipping their tea. The tea burner beside them was boiling, emitting white steam. The two of them were silent for a while. Feng Jin broke the tense atmosphere. This time, many heroes of Dongqing will definitely be gathered for the rescue of the emperor. Brother, do you want to go and join in the fun? Nanxing had been destroyed, Dongqing was nearing its end, and Zhongzhou was beginning to decline. The remaining Beiyuan and Xichang were also in chaos. The entire world had already been embroiled in the whirlpool of war. Unless a wise ruler unified the world, the chaos of the 16 kingdoms would inevitably return. If the Feng family wanted to continue for thousands of generations, they had to get past this hurdle and fight for the throne. There were millennium-old aristocratic families in the world, but there was no millennium-old royal family. The Feng family had no interest in that position and continued to follow the path of support. As a Zongzi, whether he was willing or not, Feng Gue had to choose someone with potential to be his lord. Now that the rescue of the emperor was being carried out, all the famous heroes would be gathered in one place. Why wouldn't Feng Gue go and join in the fun? Feng Gue's eyes carried a hint of coldness. His tone was calm as he said, looking at the situation in Dongqing, there are only a few forces that can barely catch my eye. Among them, the biggest is Lu Shi and his son. The rest of the small fries either have high ambitions but low abilities, or are unlucky and have weak foundations. At most, they can stir up trouble in their own territory. In my opinion, it will be difficult for them to achieve great things. It doesn't matter if I go or not. There was a saying, don't look for a boyfriend in a rubbish heap. If it were Feng Gue, he would also refuse to choose a wise lord from a group of small fries. To put it more bluntly, apart from a few specific forces, the rest were not presentable. There was no need for Feng Gue to even consider them. The world was so big, why was there a need to restrict the candidate to a small Dongqing? Feng Jin agreed with his elder brother's words. In this era, wars could not be fought on a whim. The preparations before a war were very complicated. Jiang Pingji sent the order to Fingyi County and got her informant to secretly contact Enchui to ask him about the progress on his side. She thought that they could rest during the new year, but they were still too young. When Qiguan rang and the others received the news, they all thought that they had not slept enough that morning and were hallucinating. Su Ku and the others passed the letter around. Jiang Pingji explained very clearly in the letter that they had to fight this war even if they did not want to. Yang Si curled his lips. How troublesome. Who would go to war during the new year? Su Ku knew that Yang Si had been in a bad temper recently. Who asked the government affairs of Qingan district to be placed on Yang Si's shoulders? The kitchen provided 4 to 5 meals a day, but the fat that Yang Si had just gained was still visibly thinning out. They were busy. Qiguan Rang said, let's discuss this with the officers first. We have to confirm the soldiers who will go to war as soon as possible. Su Ku was in charge of the logistics. The rations and fodder needed for the war had already been supplied. He was basically in charge of everything. From the letter that Jiang Pingji sent, she was not asking for their opinions. She was only informing them of a fact. As a capable general, all they could do now was to do their best to prepare for the war. Yang Si let out a long sigh and secretly rolled his eyes. Qiguan Rang and Su Ke were busy preparing for war. This meant that more than half of the government affairs of Fengyi County would be piled on his shoulders. This was going to exhaust him to death. Sacrificing my life for a meal, your master is really stupid. Yang Si rolled his dead fish eyes. The official documents on the table were already piled high, casting a shadow that could envelop his entire body. The page boy had been captured by Yang Si to be an able-bodied man. From the beginning, he stumbled and became adept at government affairs now. Who could understand the hardships he had gone through? He laboriously carried a large pile of bamboo slips over and placed them beside the table with a clang. He supported himself against the pile of bamboo slips and panted. Chapter 621. The boy's servant said, "Mr. is not stupid. It's just that Mr. Zixiao and the others are too cunning. They know that you can't resist the temptation of delicacies, but they still use food to seduce you. Sir, why don't you take some time to secretly learn from a chef? Once you've learned the skills, let's escape." The corners of Yang Si's mouth twitched. His tongue had been spoiled by the chefs of Fengyi County. If he left here, wouldn't he starve to death? Would they starve to death or die of exhaustion? This was a difficult choice. As a foodie, Yang Si decisively chose the latter. The former was too cruel. Because of the imperial edict to rescue the emperor, not only was Jiang Pingji's plan disrupted, but even the strategists and generals under her were busy. Even Enchui, who was working as a spy in Qingde County, was affected. When he received the contact from the informant, he thought that Jiang Pingji was going to send him supplies again. But Enchui was a cautious person. He had already sent over a batch of resources before, and they had not finished using them yet. How could he send them over again? When he thought of this, Enchui's first thought was that his identity had been exposed. He was worried, so he asked a few of his sworn brothers to protect him in secret while he went to meet the informant. Enchui's identity had not been exposed. The informant had come to inform them that the plan had been brought forward. Enchui was suspicious. Why didn't they wait until spring to start the war? The informant said, "I don't know about this either. I heard that it has something to do with the imperial edict to rescue the king. This news has already spread." Enchui wasn't someone who was good at strategizing. For a moment, he didn't understand the connection between rescuing the emperor and bringing forward Jiang Pingji's plan. He didn't ask in detail. After all, the job of an informant was to contact him, so he didn't know much. After Enchui went back, he thought about it deeply. His heart was restless. He hurriedly gathered a few of his brothers for a discussion. He suppressed his excitement and his cheeks were slightly distorted. "This is a great opportunity for us brothers to rescue the emperor. If Jiang Pingji kept her promise and gave Enchui 10% of her wealth and manpower, he could use this 10% to rescue the king and reap some benefits." Most of his sworn brothers were uncivilized people. They admired Enchui's knowledge and were even more grateful for his sincere treatment. When Enchui said it would be profitable, they believed him. The dark-skinned man first felt happy for Enchui, cupping his fists to congratulate him. Then, a look of hesitation appeared on his face. "But, Big Brother, we haven't bribed enough people. Will Fengyi County be dissatisfied?" Enchui said, "Fighting a war isn't something that can be fought on a whim. They still need to prepare the soldiers' rations and come up with a battle plan. No matter what, it will take some time. In addition to the march, it will take about half a month. If we brothers work together, we won't have to worry about anything not being done. However, despite the urgency of the situation, we cannot give ourselves away because of this and arouse the suspicion of the Red Lotus group. We must be cautious." The black-faced man nodded as he listened. He had complete trust in Anne's words. Don't worry, big brother. How can you not rest assured when we are handling this matter? I will definitely do it properly and not leave a single flaw. And Shui had a gratified look on his face. The thatched hut was filled with brotherly love and joy. Elsewhere, Huang Song was steadily expanding his territory. Like Jiang Pingji, he was caught unprepared by the imperial edict to rescue the emperor. Although he was the descendant of a eunuch, Huang Tan was the emperor's confidant. He sold his official position and received an unknown amount of money and rations. He was secretly very wealthy. In addition, Huang Song's father loved to do business. He had also accumulated a rich family property for Huang Song. With money, rations, and Huang Tan's support in the court, Huang Song's power grew steadily. He already had more than 10,000 soldiers under his command. When he received the imperial edict to rescue the emperor, he was so worried that his scalp itched. Under Feng Zhu's instigation, Huang Song had long given up his desire to be a virtuous official. If someone were to label him as a rebel and a traitor, he would not be able to defend himself. Under such circumstances, he felt a little guilty. If he responded to the imperial edict to rescue the emperor, would he not be walking right into a trap? If he did not have the intention to rebel, why would a small district magistrate of Diang district raise 10,000 soldiers? Feng Zhu snorted and said, "What are you afraid of, my lord? If they pursue this matter, you still have Lu Shi to bear the brunt. If they pursue this matter, they will pursue him first, then my lord. Now that the royal family has fallen, they have issued an imperial edict to rescue the emperor. They can't wait for the troops to be strong so that they can defeat Prince Changshu. It's a good thing that my lord has 10,000 troops. Why would I blame you?" Huang Song looked embarrassed. Yes, why was he nervous and guilty? Lu Shi had brazenly captured Fengyi County and taken Shangyang County from the Feng family. Now, he was coveting Qingde County. In the blink of an eye, the entire Wanzhou was about to fall into Lu Shi's hands. He, Huang Song, had only managed to control Maoda County. If they were to pursue this matter, Lu Shi was the biggest rebel and a traitor. He could only be regarded as a small soldier waving the flag. So, should we respond to the imperial edict to rescue the emperor? Huang Song was different from Jiang Pingji. Although Jiang Pingji occupied 2 counties, Shangyang County had not completely surrendered. That was a hidden danger. In order to solve this hidden danger, she could only take down Qingde County in one go. After expanding her military force, she would turn around and deal with the local aristocrats in Shangyang County so that they would not dare to cause trouble. In comparison, Huang Song did not have so many scruples. Qing Jing said, "I think that the imperial edict to rescue the emperor is a good opportunity to show my lord's loyalty and benevolence. Naturally, we must go." Qing Jing's thoughts coincided with Jiang Pingji's. It was a good platform to poach talents. The imperial edict to rescue the emperor was not the main point. The main point was that Huang Song could take the opportunity to show his talents and conduct and attract talents to his side. In layman's terms, it was using the platform to advertise and promote oneself. Feng Zhu seconded the idea. The other strategists in the government office also agreed. Huang Song made up his mind and made a final decision. Rescue the emperor. Go. For a moment, all the forces, big and small, had different thoughts. Because of the imperial edict to rescue the emperor, people's hearts were wavering. While the other forces gathered their troops and prepared to rescue the emperor, Jiang Pingji had already begun the final preparations before the war. This is the information sent back by our informant. Take a look. Because the war was about to begin, Jiang Pingji and Wei Ci returned to Fengyi County first. The various government affairs in Xiangyang County were left to Feng Zhen and Feng Jin to handle. Although Feng Zhen talked about going on strike all day, he completed his work very well. Feng Zhen was uninhibited, treacherous, and sly. He was extremely good at dealing with people. He was the most suitable person to deal with the gentry in Xiangyang County. As for whether he would die of exhaustion, she believed in the old saying, a scourge lives for 1,000 years. Feng Zhen was definitely someone with a long life. Moreover, Feng Jin was also helping him in Xiangyang County. He wouldn't die of exhaustion. Although the Red Lotus group is just a motley crew, many ants can kill an elephant. It's a headache to have so many people piled together. Jiang Pingji tucked her hands into her sleeves and sat on the seat of honor. Her hair still had snow on it. She had held an emergency meeting as soon as she arrived in Xiangyang District. She hadn't even had a hot meal yet. District Magistrate Liu wants to end the war quickly. We need to be cautious in this first battle. If we can take down a city in a flash, the morale of the Red Lotus group will definitely collapse. Yang Si bowed and said, if we can't take it down after a long time, or if we are at a disadvantage, it will easily affect the morale of the Red Lotus group. The Red Lotus group has the advantage in numbers. If their morale is boosted, it is very likely to prolong the war, which is very disadvantageous to us. Chapter 622. Time was limited. Jiang Pingji couldn't waste too much time with the Red Lotus group. The longer it dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for her. So, she had an idea. Jiang Pingji's eyes flickered slightly. Wei Xi's heart pounded. He had a vague sense of foreboding. He knew her too well. Every time she showed such an expression and gaze, she must be brewing some wicked idea in her heart. Jiang Pingji asking Yang Si for a plan was within his expectations. Since he dared to ask, he naturally would not be unprepared. District Magistrate Liu, please look here. Yang Si pointed to the topographic map in the government office and said, I think we can attack from here. Jiang Pingji looked in the direction Yang Si was pointing and found that it was an abandoned small town on the border of Qingda County. On the surface, the terrain didn't seem to be special, but if that was the case, Yang Si wouldn't have recommended this place. From here. She frowned. The others also followed Yang Si's train of thought. Like Yang Si, Qiguan Rang liked to use treacherous schemes. He was telepathic with him and quickly understood Yang Si's plan. Yang Si's goal was not this small town with poor defense at all. His goal was the mountain road behind the town. Meng Hun lowered his head and scratched the old skin on his hand. Occasionally, he turned his head to talk to Luoyue about something. Both of them were experienced and knew that with their little knowledge, they couldn't give much good advice. Dian Yan and Li Yun, the two curious babies, were different. Over the past 6 months, Dian Yan had been promoted by Jiang Pingji again and again. He was now the deputy captain of the recruit camp and was considered a hot newcomer. If there were no accidents, he would also lead the troops to attack the Red Lotus group this time. However, his personality was more reserved and calm. He buried the questions he didn't understand in his heart and prepared to ask for advice in private. In comparison, Li Yun was more extroverted. He had a good relationship with everyone present, and he would ask any questions he had directly. He said, Mr. Yang, I look left and right. There doesn't seem to be anything special here. Yang Si smiled faintly and said, No, Han Mei, look here again. Do you still think there's nothing special about this place? He moved his finger. Just as Qiguan Rang expected, Yang Si's goal was the mountain road behind the small town. Li Yun still didn't understand. Yang Si explained, If we want to use the fastest speed to take down the Red Lotus group and crush their morale, we can't just rely on elite soldiers and good generals. If the Red Lotus group was determined to hold their ground and concentrate their forces against District Magistrate Lu, the longer the Red Lotus group dragged this out, the more disadvantageous it would be for District Magistrate Lu. Moreover, it was close to the new year. Any slight setback would greatly damage our morale. Under such circumstances, we can only concentrate our forces to attack one place and catch them off guard. Only then will our chances of victory be higher. Yang Si had a good impression of Li Yun. Previously, this young fellow even knitted a pair of warm gloves and a circular scarf for him. Therefore, Yang Si, who usually did not like to bother with outsiders, was surprisingly patient with Li Yun. He continued, "This mountain road was built during the chaotic times of the 16 Kingdoms. It has been in disrepair for many years and is difficult to traverse, so it has long been abandoned. The people prefer the flat and safe official road. Before the official road was built, this mountain road connected Fenghu County and Jinmen County. The territorial division system of the Great Xia dynasty was similar to the county system that the viewers in the live stream knew, but there were differences. The 5 countries of Dongqing, Nanxing, Beiyuan, Xichang, and Zhongzhou all claimed to be the orthodox Great Xia dynasty. Many of their systems were copied from the previous dynasty. However, certain changes were made in the process of copying. Fengyi County included Qingan District, Jiaoping District, Maolin District, and Xiangyang District. They were all in Jiang Pingji's hands now, so I won't go into detail. Qingde County, on the other hand, also had 4 districts: Honglian District, Jinmen District, Fenghu District, and Chuyu District. The founder of the Red Lotus Group's ancestral home was in Honglian District, so the cult he founded was also named after Red Lotus. The small town that Yang Si pointed out was actually a junction point near Fenghu County and Jinmen County. At first, it was just a remote small village. Because the mountain road connected the 2 places for commerce, merchants came and went frequently. The place gradually became prosperous and slowly became a small town. However, the mountain road was difficult to traverse. In the middle of the Great Xia dynasty, the government chose another place to build an official road, and the mountain road was gradually abandoned. Without the economy brought by merchants coming and going, the prosperous small town also began to decline. Now, as a sentry point for the Red Lotus Group, it had regained some popularity. However, no one had paid attention to that mountain road for a long time. Even if it was still drawn on the topographic map, no one would consider it, whether it was a march to war or a business trip. After Yang Si's explanation, Li Yun finally understood Yang Si's little plan. He said, "Mr. Yang, do you mean that we should use this mountain road to raid Jinmen District and Fenghu District separately?" Yang Si shook his head and said, "Although the Red Lotus Group is a motley crew, they have a large number of people. If we split our forces to attack, I'm afraid there will be obstacles, which will be disadvantageous to us. According to the situation on the mountain road, I suggest that we focus on attacking Jinmen District first. Look here, although the mountain road leading to Jinmen District is longer than the other one, the slope is gentler, which can help the soldiers save energy. It will also be convenient to attack the city when the time comes." According to his plan, it was best to concentrate the troops on a surprise attack on one county and then plot other things after capturing it. They did not have as many troops as the Red Lotus Group, so it was not safe to split up. Li Yun made a sound of agreement and had another question. "If we use the mountain road, what about the siege weapons? Since it is a mountain road that has been abandoned for many years, it is not very strong. The soldiers can still pass if they are careful, but if they bring ladders or siege logs, it will be dangerous. If there are no siege weapons, even if we transfer 20,000 elite troops over, they can still delay us by relying on the city walls. Even if they won, they would probably have to ruthlessly dig out a piece of flesh. The troops that had been trained for so long were all elites and treasures in the eyes of the generals. If they died in a siege battle without siege weapons, it would be a somewhat unjust death. Since Yang Si dared to suggest this, he naturally had a countermeasure. The corners of his lips curled up a little, and he turned to face Jiang Pingji. This matter naturally depends on District Magistrate Liu. Li Yun was surprised. What does this have to do with the Lord? Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows frivolously, her posture calm and unruffled. Faced with Yang Si suddenly throwing the blame at her, she steadily caught it. She said, just as Han Mei said, it is difficult to transport siege weapons through the mountain road. If that is the case, then we will not transport them. Li Yun was anxious and hurriedly said, but my lord, if there are no siege weapons, how can the soldiers climb up the city walls? Meng Hun, who was sitting next to Li Yun, secretly tugged at his sleeves, indicating that he should not be so agitated. Only then did Li Yun realize that he had stood up agitatedly, giving off a sense of déjà vu. His handsome face blushed and he obediently returned to his seat. He apologized, I lost my composure just now, please forgive me, my lord. Chapter 623. A spy. Although everyone knew about this battle plan relied too much on the performance of the spy. It could be said that the success of the spy depended on whether the spy's performance was good. If the spy's acting skills were good and he fooled the Red Lotus group, he would definitely succeed. But what if the spy's acting skills were awkward, were exposed, or didn't meet the expected standards? They feigned an attack on Fenghu County and focused on Jinmen County. If the Red Lotus group didn't withdraw their troops from Jinmen County, it would be awkward. Su Ku and the others were a little worried that they would place their hopes on an unknown spy without a proper way out. Among those present, only Wei Ci was confident. Not only did he understand Jiang Pingji, but he also understood Shui. With regards to Jiang Pingji, Wei Ci could at most speculate her mood and plans through her words and actions, but she liked to play her cards unpredictably. It was good enough that Wei Ci could guess correctly once or twice out of 10 times. And Shui. Wei Ci had been with him for many years. He had long understood this person thoroughly. If the acting skills of all the feudal vassals were ranked, Shui would definitely be in the top 3. The conditions offered by Jiang Pingji were too tempting. Shui would bite the bait even if he knew it was a trap, not to mention that he hadn't discovered it yet. As long as he helped Jiang Pingji conquer Qingde County, Shui could take half of the captured men and money. The royal family of Dongqing had issued an edict to rescue the emperor. Shui wanted to use this springboard to develop. The 10% of the men and money that Jiang Pingji promised him were extremely important. Jiang Pingji wanted to use Qingde County to expand her military strength and land. She wanted to suppress the aristocrats in Xiangyang County and stabilize her foundation. Shui also wanted to use 10% of the men as capital to join the ranks of the Rescue the Emperor forces and take the opportunity to develop. Their interests were the same. Shui yearned for victory even more than Jiang Pingji. Under this kind of temptation, even without the urging of others, Shui would do his best to make this happen. He would do everything he could to make this happen. Just as Wei Ci was thinking about how to dispel everyone's worries and reassure them, Jiang Pingji spoke. She said, everyone's worries are not without reason. I've thought about it carefully and intend to tell you something. Wei Ci's heart skipped a beat. He was about to speak, but he was still a step too late. Jiang Pingji said, I plan to lead the vanguard battalion in this attack. These few words were like firecrackers thrown into a pot of boiling water, causing an explosion. Needless to say, both the strategists led by Su Ku and the generals led by Meng Hun were firmly against it. They knew that Jiang Pingji fought bravely, but their lord was the one who kept watch at the rear and stabilized the situation. If she ran to the front line to kill the enemy and expose her identity, the enemy would focus on her. What should she do then? No matter how brave a person was, when faced with thousands of blades, he could only wait to be chopped into minced meat. Yang Si was surprised. He didn't seem to have expected Jiang Pingji's solution to be this. He had never seen how Jiang Pingji looked like when she killed people. He thought she was just being arrogant and liked to play the hero. He suddenly had a headache. Magistrate Liu, you should consider the bigger picture. As everyone's lord, how could you disregard the danger and personally go into battle? It was one thing for her to go into battle personally, but she still wanted to lead the vanguard battalion. What was the vanguard battalion for? The vanguard battalion was responsible for scouting the path for the entire army, scouting the enemy's situation, checking out the terrain, or conducting reconnaissance or probing attacks in order to disrupt the enemy's formation and boost their morale. The tasks were arduous, and were usually made up of the most elite soldiers of the entire army. In other words, the vanguard battalion was the first unit in the army to fight with the enemy. Under normal circumstances, the reduction of members would start from the vanguard battalion. Entering the vanguard battalion meant that one could go and meet the King of Hell. Everyone's obstructions and objections drifted into her left ear and out of her right ear. No matter how eloquent their words were, she remained unmoved. Seeing the familiar scene, the audience in the live stream room expressed their delight. Tomorrow Gaokao Law, ha ha ha. Don't you think this scene is familiar? When we attacked Shingon district previously, the streamer also wanted to go to the front line, but in the end, she was stopped by the little princesses under her. Now, the team of the little princesses has expanded further, and there are more people obstructing the streamer. Should we take a gamble and see if the streamer or the little princesses will win? Cheering little angels, #despise. You all said that they are the little princesses. According to the streamer's habit of spoiling them, they will definitely be persuaded in the end. Putting aside this point, the battlefield has no eyes. As the backbone, the streamer is indeed not suitable to take risks. Shurgang, you are all ha ha ha. Am I the only one who feels sorry for the streamer? She is actually more suitable to be a general, not a lord. As a general, she can fight on the battlefield and unleash her wild nature. She can take the head of the enemy's general amidst thousands of troops and make the enemy tremble in fear. However, Jiang Pingji was everyone's backbone and their lord. She had become a panda that was protected in disguise. Perfect 10 beauties, the commenter above is not alone. Every time I see the little princesses obstructing the streamer, I feel uncomfortable. If it happens a few more times, I will turn from a fan to a hater. The streamer is a tiger or a lion, not a panda that is locked up in a zoo and carefully served. There was a lot of discussion on the bullet screen in the live stream room. Naturally, Jiang Pingji did not miss it. The idle audience compared her to a panda that was being protected, and the strategists and generals as little princesses. She felt that it was quite fitting. Then, there is no need to persuade me anymore. I have made up my mind. Jiang Pingji's gaze became determined. If she continued to be trapped here and was associated with a bunch of government affairs all day, she had almost forgotten how exhilarating it was to ride a horse and kill the enemy was. I will lead the vanguard battalion. This time, we must conquer Jinmen district with the fastest speed and the lowest casualties. Apart from me, who among the generals can do it? This matter is decided. Meng Han and the others had fought with Jiang Pingji before. Whether it was one-on-one combat or leading troops into battle, there was indeed a huge gap between them and Jiang Pingji. Yang Si was stunned and could not help but turn his gaze to Jiang Pingji. After the meeting, Yang Si pulled Wei Si aside and whispered into his ear. This lord of yours. can she still go to the battlefield with such a small body? Wei Xiai was still immersed in his own thoughts. He was interrupted by Yang Xi. He raised his head and said in a slightly mocking tone, "My lord's martial arts are extraordinary and she is brave and invincible. Why can't she go to the battlefield? Let's not talk about anything else. If you were her opponent, you wouldn't be able to defeat her even if she gave you a handicap of 2 legs, 1 hand, and 4 fingers." Yang Xi almost choked on Wei Xi's words. What was wrong with Wei Xiai? The moment he opened his mouth, he ended the conversation. Is she really as powerful as you say? Yang Xi revealed a doubtful expression. Jiang Pingji was not short, but her figure was not burly. She looked a little lean and did not look like she could fight. Wei Xiai urged, "If you don't believe me, why don't you give it a try? But come to think of it, why did you suddenly make such a suggestion?" Yang Xi was just a part-time worker. He stayed behind for the sake of delicious food, but now he took the initiative to offer a suggestion. Yang Xi looked away and said angrily, "Do you think I want to? Don't you think about your lord's temperament? Once I've boarded this pirate ship, can I still leave? If Lu Shi was just a small district magistrate, I naturally wouldn't be afraid. Now that he's about to become the magistrate, how can I escape?" Chapter 624. Yang Xi was indeed a little scared. He didn't expect Jiang Pingji to develop so quickly. In just 1 or 2 years, she had transformed from a vacant district magistrate in Xiangyang district, which was occupied by the Tsingyi army, to the prefecture magistrate, who practically controlled a state. For many people who had been through the ups and downs of officialdom, it was a long road that could not be completed in a lifetime from a county magistrate to a prefecture governor. The more Yang Xi understood Jiang Pingji, the stronger the sense of urgency in his heart. You could say that he was a coward or afraid of death, but no matter what, it was better than losing his life. Wei Xiai and Yang Xi had known each other for many years. It was easy for smart people to communicate. The two of them did not need to speak too clearly and they could understand each other's thoughts. In the words of the Livestream viewers, these two guys seemed to have slept together. The gayer they were, the stronger they were. In that case. Wei Xiai folded his hands into his sleeves and said with a faint smile, "Are you going to change the way you address my lord?" Yang Xi's expression stiffened and his face turned a little darker. After a while, he stammered, "No matter what, I'm also a talented person. If I admit defeat so easily, where do you want me to put my face? It's fine if you want me to change my words, but first, let your master express something." Back then, he had said it in a loud and clear voice, making a solemn vow. In the past, his words were still lingering in his ears. If Yang Xi took the initiative to give in, wouldn't it be a slap in the face? No matter what, he had to be reserved for a period of time. If he took the initiative to throw himself at her, what if she didn't take it seriously? When Jiang Pingji saw his talents and usefulness, she would take the initiative to extend an olive branch to him. Only then could there be harmony between the ruler and the minister. Wei Xiai lifted his sleeves and covered the smile at the corner of his lips. He said, "If you want to wait for the Lord to open her mouth and admit defeat, I'm afraid it will be difficult. Jing Rong, you've been with Her Highness for some time. When have you ever seen her give in to anyone? Don't blame me for not reminding you that you still have a bad debt with Prince Changsho. If Prince Changsho remembers it and starts to pursue the old debt of you teasing him, tsk. Wei Xiai shook his head regretfully as he spoke. Yang Xi's expression seemed to be cramping up. You've touched my sore spot. Can you not mention Prince Changsho?" After Wei Xi's reminder, Yang Xi remembered a very deceitful matter. When he jumped ship from Prince Changsho's side, he dug a big hole for Prince Changsho. If Yang Si had not secretly taken revenge on Prince Changsho, causing the front line to lose the battle, according to the situation at that time, Prince Changsho would have conquered Qinzhou long ago, killed the emperor, and ascended to the throne. How could he have been in a stalemate for more than a year, turned from the original advantage to disadvantage, and faced the predicament of retreating because of a lack of food? It could be said that if Meng Zhan hadn't intervened to form an alliance, Prince Changsho wouldn't have been able to hold on and would have retreated back to his fief. If one were to say who Prince Changsho hated the most, Yang Si would definitely be in the top 3. Wei Ci smiled. Dimples appeared on his handsome face, giving people the illusion that 100 flowers were blooming at the same time, and in an instant, they saw all the peerless beauties in the world. All right, let's not talk about this anymore. Wei Ci walked side by side with Yang Si, and there was a smile in between his words. In the beginning, he promised to be fine, but in the latter half of his sentence, he changed the topic. However, Ci and Jing Rong have known each other for many years. There is one thing that I must remind you of. Yang Si asked him with a sullen face, what is it? Wei Ci said straightforwardly, in such a big Dongqing, who else can protect you other than the Lord? The Lord is like a donkey. She won't walk when you're led, but will retreat when you beat her. The more you force her, the more she likes to be stubborn. To put it bluntly, she's willful. Jing Rong has always called her District Magistrate Liu. Have you ever seen her mind? I'm afraid it's impossible to expect her to give in first. However, if Jing Rong doesn't give in, her life will be in danger. Yang Si's face was already as black as the bottom of a pot. His hands were itching, and he really wanted to strangle Wei Ci to death. In the past, when he saw Wei Ci, he felt that he was a bright and noble person. Now that he looked at Wei Ci again, he felt that he might have been blind. When this person was split open with a knife, his flesh and blood were all black, not to mention his heart. Go ahead and be sarcastic. If you don't watch your mouth, be careful that you don't fall one day. Yang Si snorted through his nose, and he seemed to be extremely angry. The two good friends bickered endlessly, and they left the government office together. Su Ku and the others were also busy with work, so they took their leave one after another. Only Qiguan Rang slowly rubbed against the mat, unwilling to get up. When everyone had left, Jiang Pingji's gaze fell on Qiguan Rang. She asked, Wenjing, what's the outcome of the matter I asked you to ask? Qiguan Rang nervously pinched his beard. His intuition told him that something big was going to happen, but Jiang Pingji's expression was still calm, which made him fearful. My lord, Qiguan Rang's lips moved, and he could only squeeze out 2 words after opening his mouth. He did not have the confidence that he usually had. Jiang Pingji chuckled. She temporarily closed the streaming room and said, say it. No matter what the outcome is, your lord will be able to bear it. I asked you to write a letter to Master Wei Yuan. Looking at the time, there should be a reply by now. Qiguan Rang hesitated for a while, and after some deliberation, he told her the contents of Master Wei Yuan's letter. Jiang Pingji listened with a calm expression. The more she acted like this, the more Qiguan Rang felt frightened. Finally, my lord, I think this matter might be a misunderstanding. Please, my lord, Jiang Pingji lowered her eyes and chuckled. Her expression did not show the slightest hint of worry. Wenjing, you don't have to persuade me or comfort me. I've been aware of this for a long time, but I don't have any evidence. Jiang Pingji curled her lips. Her nonchalant attitude was very natural, and there was not a single flaw in it. Moreover, Wenjing, this matter is far more complicated than you think. It may even involve areas that ordinary people can't imagine. However, I am confident that I can solve it. I am the lord you chose, so you must have some confidence. If I can't even handle such a matter, won't I be letting down your trust in me? Although Qiguan Rang's mind was treacherous, and his scheming style seemed to be similar to Yang Si and Feng Zhen's, there were differences between the three of them. Yang Si loved to use tricks and schemes, but he could see the facts clearly, distinguished the severity of the situation, and was the best at judging the situation. Feng Zhen loved to do things recklessly, and he did everything according to his whims. His train of thought was cunning, and his schemes were strange and ever-changing. As for Qiguan Rang, he had some of the characteristics of Yang Si and Feng Zhen, but he was also different from them. Feng Zhen loved to show off, but Qiguan Rang did not like to stand out. He engraved the words, "Be wise and play safe," into his bones. Yang Si's weakness was very obvious. If the situation was stronger than him, he would give in. Qiguan Rang was quite stubborn in a certain aspect, and he had very strong principles. Be wise and play safe did not mean go along with the flow. Qiguan Rang was like this, yet he chose Jiang Pingji. He had almost bet everything on her. Not for anything else, but for the trust and loyalty of the group of little princesses under her, Jiang Pingji would not allow herself to lose. Jiang Pingji's attitude was firm. Qiguan Rang could only swallow the words that were in his stomach. Since his lord had already made a decision, he did not say anything more. Chapter 625. They were silent for a while. Qiguan Rang asked cautiously, "If that's the case, how does my lord plan to deal with it?" Jiang Pingji snorted and said, "I'll pretend that I don't know for now. I want to see how long that person can endure. I've already found a clue as to his motive. I'm curious to see what his expression will be like when his schemes come to naught." Qiguan Rang knew too little about the inside story, so he was confused. But Jiang Pingji's tone made him shudder with fear. Then we just leave it like this. Don't we have to take precautions?" Qiguan Rang asked. Jiang Pingji raised her brows and smiled slyly. She said with certainty, "Before I become the ruler of the world, that person won't lay a hand on me. Not only will he not be a burden, but he will also do his best to help. It's a free gift, so I'll take it. That person thinks that I don't know anything and even set up layers of barriers to mislead me. He doesn't know that sometimes, being too thorough can also be a flaw." Qiguan Rang thought that Jiang Pingji was done, so she added another sentence. "No one else can know about this matter after it comes out of your mouth and passes through my ears. She never hits someone unprepared." Wei Yuan's reply seemed to have no content, but Jiang Pingji had already grasped the crux of the matter. Scheming, right? Do you really think that all the smart people in the world are dead? Since they want to hurt each other, let's see who's more clever." Jiang Pingji raised her hand and rubbed between her brows. She said, "Wenjing, help me draft a letter." Qiguan Rang asked subconsciously, "To whom?" Jiang Pingji replied, "To my father. Speaking of which, my brother is 12 years old this year. It's not good to always stay in Hejian County. He should have an elder to guide him. I'm busy with work, but my father is free. Let him guide him. Although he's a son of a concubine, his surname is also Liu. If he grows up crooked, won't it be a disgrace to the family? By doing this, we can beat that person up without alerting him." Liu Shi was also very powerful. Liu Huan, the daughter of Prince Changshu and Wang Huiyun, eventually married into the Dongqing royal family and married the son of the emperor and Wang Huiyun. They had the same mother but different fathers. The siblings were in a mess. Liu Shi, the mastermind, gained a wave of sympathy from passers-by. As for this bastard son, his identity was also quite impressive. Who said that women were petty? When a man held a grudge, his means of revenge were even more terrifying. Jiang Pingji had never thought that there would be so many demons and monsters gathered in the small backyard of the Lus. Qiguan Rang's expression froze. He thought that Jiang Pingji had suffered a great blow, which was why she said that. He looked closely and realized that she was very clear-headed. Yes. Qiguan Rang agreed. Jiang Pingji happily ended the topic and swept away the gloomy atmosphere from before. She turned to ask Qiguan Rang about his opinion on Yang Xi's scheme. Qiguan Rang appreciated Yang Xi's stratagem very much. He was very good at using fake and real. Fighting a war was never a simple matter. Strange and treacherous schemes often had unexpected benefits. They had planted spies in the Red Lotus group. If they operated properly, taking down Jinmen County was a sure thing. The only flaw was, Qiguan Rang's expression was grave. My lord's loyal and devoted elite soldiers and generals, why take the risk? The lords of other families wish they could stay at home, always remembering that a gentleman does not stand under a collapsing wall. On the other hand, his lord was thinking about how to run out every day. If she made a mistake, no one knew where she would have run off to. Previously, there were many people around, so Qiguan Rang did not speak much to persuade her. Now that there were only the two of them, there was no need to worry about many things. Jiang Pingji was also very straightforward. Wen Zheng, do you still remember what I was like when you first met me? I did whatever I wanted to do, and no one could force me to do what I didn't want to do. I was the playboy from Hejin County. Ever since I became the magistrate of Xiangyang District, I feel like I've been restrained, like a fierce tiger locked in a cage. The sharp teeth of a fierce tiger are used to bite its prey, not to be admired. After hearing this, Qiguan Rang's face turned pale and he hurriedly explained. Why would my lord have such an idea? No one else has ever thought of restraining my lord. He was really frightened. It was really frightening to be accused of such a serious crime. Jiang Pingji said, I know you're worried about me because I'm your lord, your backbone. If I die, the forces that we've conquered will also collapse. But Wen Zheng, have you ever seen a general cowering behind his soldiers because he's afraid of dying in battle? When hasn't he charged and broken through enemy lines, running at the forefront? I'm your lord, but I can also be a general who is good at war. There's no conflict between the two. Believe me, I'll lead you to the most honorable position in the world. Those who did not understand Jiang Pingji would think that the youth was too arrogant to the extreme. But those who knew her knew that her arrogance would become reality in the end. She said leisurely, Wen Zheng, if you're really worried about me, why don't you take care of the rear so that I don't have to worry about fighting at the front lines? Qiguan Rang was choked by these hooligan words. When it came to acting shamelessly, who was better at it than his lord? She played the emotional card, acted pitiful, pretended to be innocent, stirred up emotions, and evaded the topic. Even if it was Qiguan Rang, he would not be able to handle it. Hence, many attempts to dissuade her to no avail. It became an established fact that Jiang Pingji would lead the vanguard battalion. The soldiers below did not know the bitterness of the strategists. When they heard that the commander of this expedition was their lord, they all seemed to be on steroids. The battle had not yet begun, but their morale was already high. Jiang Pingji was a non-mainstream lord. The place she most often stayed was not the government office, but the woodworking workshop and the military camp. She would patrol there every few days. Occasionally, when she sparred with Li Yun, Meng Hun, and Luo Yu on the drill ground, there would always be soldiers who liked to watch the fun secretly watching. For many soldiers, their lord was not a high and mighty deity. Instead, she was a valiant and extraordinary man with nimble skills. In layman's terms, Jiang Pingji was very down-to-earth. Her actions invisibly shortened the distance between the role of the lord and the soldiers, making the former more approachable to the people. In the face of such a situation, no matter how worried the strategists were, they could only swallow their bitterness. The soldiers had such high expectations of their lord. If they persuaded Jiang Pingji to withdraw from the front lines, it would be a huge blow to their morale. Fengyi County and Qingde County were not far apart. The movement of the troops here had alarmed the Red Lotus Group. The Tsingyi army was already like a grasshopper at the end of autumn. They could not jump around for more than a few days. If they were to deal with the Tsingyi army, there was no need for such a large number of troops. Obviously, the transfer of troops from Fengyi County was directed at the Red Lotus Group. When the higher-ups of the Red Lotus Group heard this news, their expressions were as grave as still water. One by one, they could not help but criticize Jiang Pingji in their hearts. Chapter 626. Jiang Pingji's unreasonable actions caused the Red Lotus Group to panic. The faces of the cult's higher-ups were as dark as if their parents had died. They knew that they were the target of Jiang Pingji's expedition, but they still prayed in their hearts that she was going to find trouble with someone else. As time passed, the information sent back by the informants decreased. The higher-ups began to feel restless. The reason why I called everyone here today is to discuss countermeasures. The chief has not slept well for many days because of this matter. As the chief's right-hand men, we should share the chief's burdens and solve his problems. I wonder if everyone has any good countermeasures? He was a handsome and refined young scholar. He looked reserved and shy, but he was full of bad ideas. Before the troubled times, he was a wastrel who cheated and fooled around with widows all day long. Taking advantage of the earthquake in Shangjing, he rose to become a high-ranking member of the Red Lotus Group. He was trusted by the sect leader, and he often used the sect leader's authority as a token of his authority to bully his followers. And Shui was among the crowd. With Jiang Pingji's financial and material assistance, and Shui's plan to win over the hearts of the people went even more smoothly. How could a group of illiterate, ignorant people from the wilderness be a match for Shui, who had a glib tongue? Even if they were wary at first, after being tricked by Shui, they wished they could dig out their hearts and be on his good side. Therefore, Shui rose from a small leader to a leader who was neither too big nor too small. He was qualified to participate in such a meeting. Just as Wei Ci ridiculed, Shui's acting skills were superb. In the era of live streaming, winning an Oscar would be a piece of cake. He wanted Jiang Pingji to win more than anyone else, so he worked harder than anyone else. If Jiang Pingji won, the chips that Shui had bet on her would increase. Only then would they have value. Faced with the questions of the higher-ups, the group of illiterate boorish men looked at each other in dismay. Wasn't it a joke to ask them to come up with a plan? The atmosphere at the scene was awkward. The scholar seemed to realize this as well. His cheeks turned slightly red, and a hint of embarrassment appeared on his face. He would only ask a group of ignorant boorish men if there was something wrong with his brain. What good ideas could a group of guys with only muscles for brains have? Just as he was thinking about how to bring the topic back and ease the atmosphere, Shui stepped forward. Compared to those brawny and boorish men who didn't wash for 10 days to half a month, Shui, this refined and noble person, was clearly different. Shui, who stood out like a crane in a flock of chickens, stepped forward and said, "This lowly one is willing to contribute his meager strength to the cause of sect master's hegemony." The scholar's eyes lit up. He could smell the scent of his own kind. He quickly asked, "What's your name?" Shui revealed his background, and he did not hide his real name. After all, with the level of the Red Lotus Group, it was destined that they would not know who Shui was. "Did you just say that you have an idea?" The scholar asked in a genteel manner, addressing Shui by his courtesy name. "Duishi, tell me quickly. 1 cannot outsmart 2, and 2 cannot outsmart 3. As the strategist that the leader of the Red Lotus group relied heavily on, the scholar's ups and downs were still manageable for ordinary people, but when faced with a strong enemy like Jiang Pingji, his limited knowledge seemed to be stretched thin. Therefore, in order to maintain the supreme leader's trust, he called for this meeting. It was better to have a group of people think of a solution than him alone. Seeing Enchui, the scholar felt that he saw hope. Enchui's appearance was secondary. The key was his refined and noble aura. At a glance, one could tell that he had a good upbringing and was literate. The scholar stubbornly believed that a scholar was definitely smarter than a boorish man. Enchui deliberated for a moment, then said unhurriedly, "In my opinion, now is not the time to be anxious." The scholar's brows furrowed, and he was a little displeased. If he was not anxious now, should he wait until a knife was held to his neck? However, it was rare to find a scholar, so the scholar tolerated it. "Why do you say that?" Enchui straightened his chest and said energetically, "I heard that the Emperor of Dongqing has issued an edict to rescue the Emperor, ordering the heroes of the world to go rescue the Emperor. This Lu Shi controls Fengyi County and Xiangyang County, and has 30,000 to 40,000 troops. Naturally, he will also go rescue the Emperor. If this person does not go, he will be a traitor, and all the heroes of the world will have the right to punish him. Therefore, Lu Shi must go rescue the Emperor." The scholar was surprised for a moment, and a new expression appeared on his face. Why hadn't he thought of this? He looked as if he had been inspired and analyzed the situation. So, Lu Shi did not mobilize his troops to attack us, but to go south to rescue the Emperor? Even a dedicated veteran like Enchui felt that he could not continue acting in the face of the naive scholar. Who gave the Red Lotus leader the courage to let such an idiot be a military counselor? His brain must have been kicked by a donkey. If Lu Shi mobilized his troops to rescue the Emperor, how could he not have even prepared for the new year? According to the current situation in Dongqing, which major force would take the half-dead Dongqing royal family seriously? Because the scholar was the brain of the Red Lotus group and played the role of a counselor, Enchui had to give him face. Therefore, he said, there is such a possibility. The scholar was just about to breathe a sigh of relief. As long as they were not fighting the Red Lotus group, however, Enchui added another sentence. However, after careful consideration, I fear that Lu Shi's intentions are not with us, but with the Red Lotus group. The scholar had just breathed a sigh of relief, but he was once again worried. What? Enchui smiled. With a confident demeanor, he said, Lu Shi has already stabilized Fengyi County and took over Xiangyang County in the winter. Everyone knew what the situation was like in Xiangyang County. My group and the Tsingyi army have attacked repeatedly, but we have not been able to conquer it. In other words, Lu Shi has taken over Xiangyang County, and his strength is still intact. With the troops from Xiangyang County and Fengyi County, this person's power is at its peak. If I were Lu Shi, I would naturally hope to take advantage of this momentum and take down Qingde County in one go, so that I can unify Wanzhou. There were only 6 states in Dongqing, and Lu Shi alone occupied one. After hearing this, the scholar felt that it made sense. However, if he had been smarter, he would have realized that Enchui was only fooling him. Enchui spoke a lot, and it seemed to make sense, but in reality, it was useless. It was mostly nonsense. The scholar was impressed by Enchui's intelligence, but he was afraid that if he did not perform as well as Enchui, it would affect his prestige in the Red Lotus group. Therefore, the scholar invited Enchui to the back hall for a detailed discussion. As soon as they sat down, the scholar hurriedly asked, Duo Shi, why did you say that you were in no hurry? Enchui frowned secretly. He did not like people calling him by his courtesy name. However, he did not express this negative and irritated emotion. Instead, he looked excited, as if he was about to be put in an important position. Chapter 627. When the scholar heard this, his expression turned anxious. Isn't Lu Shi a little too greedy? He wants to rescue the emperor and attack our sect at the same time. He's not afraid of choking to death. And Shui was speechless again. Jiang Pingji and the Red Lotus group were enemies. If she did not take advantage of his weakness, would she love him with motherly love? And Shui said, "Don't be impatient, don't be impatient. I said there's no need to be anxious precisely because Lu Shi is too greedy. He wants to have the best of both worlds, so he must expand the results of the battle as quickly as possible. They can't afford to delay a battle if they follow the rules." The scholar was fascinated. He pricked up his ears for fear of missing a word. In this situation, Lu Shi can only concentrate his forces to attack one place. Our sect has many people and countless followers. Why would we be afraid of Lu Shi's mere tens of thousands of troops? If he wants to attack by force, we will concentrate our forces and delay them. After a long time, he will naturally retreat. The scholar nodded as he listened, then asked a stupid question. Why would he retreat voluntarily? And Shui choked. He really did not want to answer such a stupid question. Because it's to rescue the emperor. Lu Shi's time cannot be delayed. The scholar nodded his head in agreement. He finally understood. In other words, we just need to delay him. As long as they delayed him, Lu Shi would retreat without a fight. And Shui agreed, that's exactly what I mean. The scholar asked again, but how do we know where Lu Shi will attack? Qingde County's terrain is not complicated, but it is vast. It is troublesome and a waste of time to send reinforcements. Duo Shi, where do you think Lu Shi will concentrate his forces to attack? And Shui lowered his eyes. With such a pig brain as a military advisor, it was no wonder that they could not suppress the Tsingyi army. The Red Lotus group had many people, but their brains were too stupid. This is why I said there's no need to be anxious. And Shui looked like he was giving advice. He smiled and said, we wait for Lu Shi's next move. Lu Shi is fighting a long-distance battle, while we are defending. There are flat official roads in the county. We can move troops much faster than them. Instead of worrying and panicking now and making the people panic, it is better to sit on the fishing platform and wait for Lu Shi to come to us. No matter where he attacks, as long as we keep an eye on him, no matter how he attacks, we will be able to gain the upper hand. And Shui had given the Red Lotus group a solid blow, so much so that the scholar's bones went limp and his mentality swelled to the heavens. When the scholar heard this, his eyes lit up. He held Anne's hands and called her his confidant. And Shui chuckled. He would never befriend a pig. His expression was cold. The scholar asked a few more stupid questions in detail, and Shui answered them in detail, without any intention of hiding anything. The scholar was very satisfied with their conversation. He patted Shui's shoulder. You've done well. You've done a great service this time. I'll definitely put in a good word for you in front of the cult master. And Shui revealed an expression of uncontrollable ecstasy on his face, but he pretended to be reserved and humbly declined. However, according to his preliminary test of the scholar, this person would not recommend him to the Red Lotus group's leader. Instead, he would hide him. Why? The Red Lotus group did not need two equally smart strategists. If Shui was too smart and capable, it would make the scholar seem too stupid and useless. And Shui was well aware of this little trick to suppress him. Anyway, he did not need the Red Lotus group's attention. Whether he put in a good word for him or not, it did not mean much to him. The Red Lotus group's leader trusted the scholar more, and Shui could not match this trust in a short period of time. as 007 that Jiang Pingji had planted, and Chui needed the Red Lotus Group's leader to believe his words without a doubt. The scholar was the best mouthpiece. As expected, the scholar turned around and reported to the Red Lotus Group's leader. He modified Chui's words and shifted them to his own results, not mentioning Chui's existence at all. The Red Lotus Group's leader was a stocky man who was less than 5 feet tall. His face was full of pockmarks, and to hide his ugliness, he kept a full beard. He and the scholar were from the same hometown. Before the uprising, they were on good terms. After the uprising, he trusted the scholar. He pinched his beard and muttered to himself for a while. "We'll do as you say. I want to see what Lu Shi is capable of to dare offend a god." As mentioned before, the Tsing-Yi army were bandits, and the Red Lotus Group were bandits with faith. This leader claimed to be the incarnation of a god who descended to save the people. But in reality, before he became the incarnation of a god, he was just a random doctor who had studied medicine for a few years. By chance, he had obtained a copy of the sect's doctrine that had been passed down during the chaotic times of the 16 Kingdoms. After reading it, he felt that it made sense and spread it everywhere. However, the ancient books did not specify which sect it was, so he simply named it after his hometown, Red Lotus District. After a few years, he had accumulated a group of believers in his hometown, Red Lotus District, which laid the foundation for the uprising that followed. Coincidentally, there was an earthquake in Shangjing. The royal family moved the capital, disregarding the lives of the people. He simply raised the doctrine and led his followers in rebellion. If the Red Lotus Group had been lucky and had not been stopped by the Tsing-Yi army, it was estimated that the Red Lotus Group would have spread throughout the north. It was a pity that luck was not on their side. The Tsing-Yi army suddenly emerged as a new force, and they fought too fiercely with the Red Lotus Group in the north. In the end, no one could do anything to the other, and no one could develop and grow stronger. Instead, it benefited Jiang Pingji. Because of his advice, the scholar received a large reward. This also strengthened his desire to continue suppressing Chui. However, in order to maintain such a high standard of intelligence, he still needed Chui to be his gunman. In order to further gain the scholar's trust, Chui then helped him solve 2 more problems. In the eyes of the Red Lotus Group, their military counselor seemed to have turned on a cheat code. His body shone even more brightly. At the same time, Jiang Pingji had already made preparations for the expedition. The allocated rations were abundant, and the selected soldiers were also elites. Even though they stood in the cold wind, their postures were still tall and straight. Jiang Pingji stepped onto the platform and officially announced that she would be the commander-in-chief of the Vanguard Battalion. This time, Li Yun was also promoted from deputy captain to captain. He led the right wing and coordinated with the Vanguard Battalion and the middle troops. This time, Meng Hun stayed behind to look after the home. Luo Yu was responsible for the transportation of rations in the rear and shouldered various logistical matters. Dian Yan was appointed deputy captain of the Vanguard Battalion and charged forward with Jiang Pingji. The women's battalion led by Jiang Nongqin was the vanguard to support the Vanguard Battalion's offensive tactics. As for the strategists who would follow the army, Jiang Pingji considered the few people under her command and finally chose Yang Si. Qiguan Rang would oversee the middle troops, Wei Si and Su Ku would stay behind to look after the home, and Yang Si would follow the army into battle. When Yang Si learned of the results, he could not help but be speechless and gasp in surprise. "I really don't know if your lord is magnanimous or broad-minded. She even dares to put someone in an important position who has yet to surrender." Wei Si laughed and said, "Naturally, the Lord trusts the people she dares to use. What's more, you're the one who came up with the plan for the surprise attack this time. If I don't bring you along, who will I bring along? It's just that." I heard that the mountain road is treacherous. Jing Rong, you must be careful. Yang Xi's face darkened, like the ashes at the bottom of a pot. Chapter 628. The flags fluttered in the wind, and the howling cold wind rolled up the snow and ice. As a pregnant woman, White was treated like a little princess. The warhorse that accompanied them to the battle this time was replaced by Little White. The situation on the mountain road had been investigated in advance. Large-scale goods could not pass through, and the road was rugged and steep. The troops could only go into battle lightly. Jiang Pingji said, "Let's take down that small town first. The scouts that we send out should be quick-witted. Report back immediately if anything happens." Although it was a surprise attack, Jiang Pingji did not intend to be secretive. She brought a total of 10,000 troops and horses for this battle. The remaining 10,000 and the new recruits were left behind to guard the home. Apart from guarding the home, they were also responsible for the safety of the logistics and the supply route. If the supply route was cut off, the war could not be fought at all. Under normal circumstances, Jiang Pingji could take more people with her. However, the situation in Shangyang County had not been stabilized, so she could not transfer too many troops. She did not want to receive news that her home base had been destroyed after she had just won a great victory at the front line. Little White was gentle and reserved in front of Jiang Pingji and White, but it was like a different horse on the battlefield. Which man did not like a good horse? During the march, Yang Xi looked at Little White with envy. Little White seemed to sense his gaze and snorted in his direction. Yang Xi, who seemed to be despised by a horse, was speechless. The army set off. Other than the crunching of the snow, the howling wind, and the breathing of the people, there was no other movement in the air. Jiang Pingji was at ease. The march was rather boring, so she simply turned on the streaming room. In an instant, the audience in another dimension received a notification that they had to take advantage of their high hand speed. The 150,000 live stream slots were filled in an instant. Through the camera in the streaming room, the audience could clearly see the scene in front of the camera. It was several times clearer than the popular 1080p. The sky was dark, and the snow was blowing. The color under the sky was slightly gray. Jiang Pingji was dressed in a red and white military uniform, which made her look handsome and heroic. Her figure, outlined by the armor, looked slender and well-proportioned. She did not look bloated or clumsy at all. The audience in the streaming room had long been used to her wide-sleeved scholarly or rough image. Now that she was dressed in armor and riding on a tall horse, she looked like a valiant young general who had walked out of a painting. They immediately howled like wolves and the bullet screen whistled. Guangguan Juju, oh, 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 look what I caught, a handsome streamer. Red and white military uniform, the one on a snow-white horse. She stands in the wind and snow. She's like a goddess in my dreams. Streamer, do you still need a salted fish to warm your bed? Zai Zhizhou, pay. With salted fish warming the bed, wasn't he afraid that the bed would be filled with the smell of fish? I'm different. Host, look at me. I just used shampoo and washed myself from head to toe. I'm clean and I even have a nice fragrance when I walk. Let me warm the bed. I promise the bed won't smell like fish. Goddess Pingji, stop talking. My husband is here. He's wearing red clothes and silver armor, and he's riding a big horse. He looks exactly like the streamer. That's enough. I'm going to open the door for my dear husband. We're going to do some he exercises together at night. Jia wa QQ, you're all hysterical. No matter how handsome the streamer is, she's still a woman. Streamer Zheng Shangwo, mediocre person, do you know what love at first sight feels like? The moment I saw the streamer's figure, I decided that I wanted to be gay for her. Even if I had to bend into a mosquito coil, I'd be willing. She's only my husband. Streamer Sishangwo, pay. What's the big deal about being gay for the streamer? I'm even willing to straighten myself for the streamer. Jiang Pingji was secretly surprised to see the quarrel between the two wives in the streaming room. This group of capricious fairies had a war of words some time ago over which of her counselors was the husband of the entire nation. What about now? With the streamer as their new love, they had forgotten about their old love. As the husband that 150,000 idle viewers were fighting over, Jiang Pingji found the boring military journey interesting. They stopped to rest midway. Jiang Pingji handed her portion of meat soup to Yang Si. Drink this to warm up. There are still a few days to the destination. Don't tire yourself out. Although Yang Si was a counselor, he belonged to the vanguard battalion. He had to ride a horse to withstand the wind and snow during the march. After a few hours, not only was the inner side of his thighs in pain from the abrasion, but his cheeks were also flushed red from the biting cold wind. He could barely feel them. He wore a circle-shaped scarf and a pair of wool gloves that Li Yun, the little angel, had made out of friendship. He was so cold that his shoulders were shivering. Although the literati of this era also practiced martial arts, their physiques were still much weaker than those of warriors. Trembling, he took the ceramic bowl that Jiang Pingji handed to him. He did not mind the heat and gulped it down in one gulp. The heat spread to his limbs and bones. Heaving a long and comfortable sigh, Yang Si let go of his thoughts. He suddenly thought of something and teased her. Such lousy weather, it's really cold. Fortunately, it's me. If it were Zixiao, he'd probably fall sick from the wind. Jiang Pingji casually replied, I know. His body hasn't recovered yet. I won't let him follow the army in this season. Yang Si was stunned after hearing that. He carefully pondered over the deeper meaning of her words. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. Did Lu Shi mean that, if the season was better, the person who followed the army would not be him but Wei Ci? That shouldn't be the case, right? Jiang Pingji smiled and said, yes, it's exactly what you're thinking. Yang Si was speechless. He really wanted to smash the ceramic bowl in his hand, along with the meat soup inside, onto Jiang Pingji's forehead. What did he do wrong in his previous life to offend Wei Ci and Jiang Pingji? Did he have to be mocked by them in this life? Sob, sob, sob. He felt wronged. If he and Jiang Pingji fell out, it was definitely because she and Wei Ci's mouths were too vicious. Jiang Pingji added with a smile to salvage Yang Si's emotional state, which was on the verge of a breakdown. Of course, Zixiao's health is one aspect. The other aspect is that Jing Rong is outstanding and shouldn't be neglected. Look, how artistic she was with her words. It was obvious that she spared no effort to exploit Yang Si's labor and used the casual worker like a mule. In Jiang Pingji's words, it was said that she relied on and trusted Yang Si and could not bear for his talents to be buried. If it were a fool, he would probably be coaxed to tears. Obviously, Yang Si was not a fool, but he had no way to refute. Once again, he sighed with emotion. He had really boarded a pirate ship. If time could be reversed, Yang Si would definitely cling to Huang Song's thigh and never step into Fengyi County. Yang Si laughed coldly. In that case, I have to thank you for thinking highly of me and be deeply grateful. Sooner or later, he had to accept his fate. Yang Si simply changed the way he addressed her. He looked like he had given up. Jiang Pingji seemed to not notice the change in how Yang Si addressed her. Her attitude was natural. There's no need to be deeply grateful, but I will continue to rely on you. The subtext was, continue to work overtime after returning from the war. I think very highly of you. Yang Si looked at the ceramic bowl in his hand. There was still half of the delicious meat soup left. Should he smash the bowl on Jiang Pingji's forehead when she was unprepared, or should he drink it himself? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.